Can you hear what I hear? Do you see what I see? Can you hear what I hear? Do you feel like I feel? Can you dream like I dream?
Alright, greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Episodic Discussion Podcast, where we will be talking about Bleach. I've been binge watching this shit for like 3 weeks, so I'm more than ready for this. I have my panel here. First, as always, I am the host, Renegade Operative, and our first guest is Sanjin.
Oh, hello. I'm so happy to be here and looking forward to talking about some Bleach.
Next guest is Ronan.
Welcome to our soul society.
Okay, fake eyes and we alright then. Next up we have Rocker.
Oh, I'm not wearing any pants.
What the fuck? We starting off strong. We don't need to see your Soul Reaper junk, sir. Put that away. And next we have Shook.
Hello, hello. I'm very excited to talk about this one. Been a minute since I want to discuss Bleach, and I love Bleach so much. So let's see how this goes.
All right. All right, we are ready. So let's get right into it with the first question. Pretty basic one. How did you initially discover Bleach for the first time, and what was it like seeing it, and what hooked you to the premise? And I will go first with Rocker.
All right. Well, how I discovered Bleach, ironically, back in high school. Just gotten out of school and everything. Just got home. A friend of mine had called me up and said, "Hey, you got to check out this new anime called Bleach." And I'm like, "Okay, what's the premise?" Gave it to me, so I looked it up, started watching, and I got hooked. And what hooked me was, to me, it was like a different thing. Random everyday guy gets fucking powers of a death god, has to go around murking shit. And I was hooked. And I like the art style too. I'll keep that short and simple.
No, that's fine. That's totally fine. I guess, you know what? I'll go next, then I'll select Ronan after me. So how I got into it. Now, as I told you guys before when I started this podcast, I wasn't initially into Bleach. I don't know what it was. I think it was because I was into other anime at the time. So you know how you binge watch one anime and then you go to another one and then you go to another one. So I was caught up in that craze of Yu Yu Hakusho and Death Note, and I kind of was like lost in the sauce about Bleach. But I remember watching a bit of it on Adult Swim, and I thought it was interesting. It was like, oh, here's this like kid, he's a soul reaper, he's killing all these hollows and ghosts, and it's something that it is a shonen format, but they tried to do something a little bit different with it. So it caught my eye a little bit, but I didn't sit down and watch it all the way until just now. And after that point, I was kind of like, this is the most fucking hype thing ever. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. It's one of those things where it's better late than never. And that's how I got into the series, like, for the first time. Adult Swim kind of conjured my interest a little bit, and watching it now was kind of like, this is super hype. So that's how I got into Bleach and rediscovered it. Next up is Ronan. How do you feel about Bleach?
Well, I discovered it when I was binge watching like Death Note and Yu Yu Hakusho with my friends back in middle school. And my friends told me, "Hey, you should watch this really cool show called Bleach." And I'm like, huh, what is Bleach? I check it out. I found out the main protagonist is voiced by Johnny Young Bosch, so that's a plus right there. Um, and a lot of good English dub voice actors were in that show, so I fit right in. Like, holy shit, Ichigo's voiced by Johnny Young Bosch. This is gonna be a great show, and I got hooked as soon as the story got interesting. The artwork, the attacks, the fights, and my god, the music. Like that is like whoever composed the music for Tite Kubo's anime. Props to you, sir, because or madam, because you cooked with the soundtracks. I still have treachery. I still have treachery as one of my ringtones in my phone back in the day. But still good show. I really highly recommend it. It's really great. I've been a fan of it since I was small little boy, and that's how I got hooked.
Sanjin, it is your turn. How did you discover Bleach for the first time in history?
So for me, it was I'm sure basically the point where everyone else has said, where it started airing on Adult Swim. I was probably watching some other stuff around that time. I'm not sure exactly what, and so it would like bleed into. It would either come before or after what I was watching, and so I gave it a try a few times, but it was in that first season, the street level stuff, and just like, I don't know, Asterisk by Orange Range, that opening theme was catchy, but the street level stuff like wasn't really appealing to me that much, and so I just kind of passed on it for a little bit. But then tried it again, or like caught it sometime later, and then suddenly it had opened up and gone into a completely different space, where entering the Soul Society, and suddenly there's this whole great big world, and there's all these factions and all these captains, and the power structures and or like the how the abilities and everything work are suddenly getting explained, and it's just all very fascinating, and it just sucked me in right then and there. I couldn't get enough once that Soul Society arc started, and just like I suddenly wanted to know everything about the structure of there, just like the different squad roles. Like obviously there's like a medical squad, research and development. I think like Squad 9 had like a newspaper or magazine or something like that, and then just finding out all the interesting stuff about like how Zanpakutos toes are generated from the wielder's souls and are each unique, like they have their own names and commands and all that stuff. It's like, wow, this is so cool. But I mean, like, it sucks me in, and I just can't get enough of that. But it's like, it's still, for some reason, it's still kind of weird when it comes up in a conversation as like a popular anime with like other stuff like Naruto and One Piece. I'm like, what? It is? People watch this? And it's like, it's hard to recommend it, but just like I couldn't get enough of it after that.
Shug, what about you? How was your experience with Bleach for the first time in history?
Oh well, mine was pretty much like everybody else. Just uh, one of these days we were just browsing a channel, in the dark of night, basically, and I stumbled upon it. But the way that I stumbled upon it was with Renji and Ichigo having their second fight in the Soul Society arc. And that was basically my first episode. And I remember whenever I, traveled this, I think it was like a random Saturday or some shit in Adult Swim, and it's like, oh, this shit exists. This is cool. I like it. It captivated me almost instantly, mainly because of them two fighting and them going, pretty much just ape shit on each other, trying to kill each other. And after that, I just started watching it weekly, and it came to a point where I couldn't watch it and I needed to, start reading it. So, I was able to find how to read it and all that stuff online. So I got addicted pretty easily or very quickly to it. It kind of just, it tickled that kind of, just nerve that you want to watch it and watch more. And it's just like, got to keep going with it. And to this day, I have rewatched it as many times as I can, so, something that grew an addiction. It's almost unhealthy.
All right, and we're moving to question number 2. Now we're talking about the main character himself, Ichigo Kurosaki, his motives and characterization throughout the entirety of Bleach. How did you feel? And first we will go with Ronan.
I will say Ichigo is a great character, by the way, a really fun protagonist, a different protagonist. He is very different from Naruto and Ichigo. Like, Naruto's gonna say, I'm gonna be Hokage! Luffy's, I wanna be the Pirate King. Ichigo, I just wanna protect my family and friends and become stronger. Like, that, to me, is a really good character. It's not like he's not trying to be the Soul King or anything like that. He just wants to protect his family and friends and get stronger and learn about his heritage. So Ichigo, in my opinion, is out of the big 3 and some other anime characters, he's actually the most how could I put it? Diverse, really good written character. Not generic shonen protagonist. He has his goals, he has his moments, he has his struggles, being a soul reaper, being human, being a visor, and a lot of other powers we're not going to discuss right now because that's spoilers. So I say yes, Ichigo is a very diverse, unique character out of the shonen trope. Not really the whole dumb shonen character.
Rocker, what about you? How you feel about Ichigo? Rocker? Oh, well, I guess I'll go then. So I agree. Ichigo has a more, I want to say the best word to use is like he has humane traits. Someone who wants to protect their friends, family, their people, and he puts that first. He's a very determined character, and when he puts his like mind on trying to defeat the enemies, if they get in his way of fucking with his family, you damn sure better believe he's gonna put on a fight for that. I also think a layer of this character that's important is his darker side. So when we see the rising of Hollow Ichigo, or White as they call him, that is a thing that haunts him. This is a character that has like almost a unique sadness to them, and you can see that between arcs. You can see when he's defeated, he really takes it personally. He goes out and he trains his ass off. You see when he fights against Uobach, that he gives up. Basically, he says, oh, it's over, my sword is broken, my spirit is broken, or Hime's down, it's over. Which is, a subversion on, oh, the protagonist always wins. Not in that situation. You can see when he pushed Toski away and he was like, you know what, leave me alone, I'm gonna go save Orihime myself, I don't want you to get hurt, don't worry about it. So you can see that sort of dark layer with his character where he begins pushing people away or gives into giving up when it's truly over. And there's like a strength of push and pull of that and the depression from Ichigo, which uniquely makes this character. I think you see that right into the moment where you find out who Ichigo really is. The blood of a Quincy and a Shinigami and the villains who somewhat created him. I think Ichigo is like just super unique and awesome when you think about it. Also, like, I like his look as well. A lot of people really don't talk about it, but it's something cool about how the character looks with the orange hair and the fact that sometimes when he fights and he gets into situations and he starts bleeding, it just looks like really cool aesthetically in anime. And one of my favorite looks of his, I guess I can cite this off, is definitely when he bankais and you see the sort of red lining inside of his like shirt and everything, and it's just so awesome. So definitely a cool character, definitely one that does not always win 24/7, which I can appreciate. He takes a couple of L's, but he's still a very consistent character, and consistency is what Ichigo is all about. Never changed, forever determined. Rocker, it is your turn. What do you think about Ichigo?
Excuse me. Sorry about that, but what I like about him is his simplicity. he's there. His desire mainly is to protect his loved ones and his friends. I mean, yeah, he's got his demons, as anybody does, but his overwhelming desire to protect his loved ones keeps him going. I mean, he's got multiple different parts in him. He's got his human part, the hollow part, the Shinigami part, the Quincy part. He's working hard to keep basically be it now he's working hard to keep all those parts in balance, but at first he didn't know anything like that. All he knew was he was human, and then once he got shanked by Rukia to gain the powers of the Shinigami, he's like, well, now I got to balance my human side and the Soul Reaper side. That's what I like about him is he's a very simple character driven by very simple desires to protect those he loves. And I think that can really take a character pretty freaking far. And I will say that my favorite form of his would be the first time we see him go full on Vasto Lorde mode.
I was
It's
waiting
just-
for someone to say that. That's gonna be a lot
You
of people's favorites.
Just out of nowhere, you see him, big puff of smoke, and then all of a sudden he's got full on hollow mask, the horns pointing down, and he's about to wreck fucking face.
Sanjin, what about you? What are your favorite aspects about Ichigo Kurosaki?
So much like I believe Ronan was saying, he's a little more difficult to pin down, or like his motivation isn't as easy to simplify as is like Naruto's or Luffy's. The thing with Ichigo is I feel like his motivations and like his character is strongest when there's like one particular person that he's trying to protect. That really shines through in like the Soul Society arc when he's trying to rescue Rukia, and the Hueco Mondo arc where he's trying to rescue Orihime, and that's like a big part of like why those arcs are so big, because he's always kind of front and center, but those are specifically centered around him in a lot of ways. Like he's the driving force of it entirely with his motivations and what he's trying to do. And just also like testament to Kubo and like however the writing worked, but they managed to find a way to make Ichigo a part of like every single faction in the series. As other people have mentioned, he was human, he turned into a Soul Reaper, he's a part Hollow, and he's also part Quincy. And so just like he has a stake in every single thing that's going on, regardless of the faction, because he's a part of all of them.
Shug, how about you? What is your favorite aspects of Ichigo as a character?
Yeah, I would say, pretty much about the same with y'all. He's one of these characters that is just, I would call him fairly unique compared to the other two, let's say, big three. And like the normal shonen trope, which is just a fucking a clown of a character with one aspiration, wanting to become the most powerful being in whatever show there is. And that's it. That's their whole thing. And they, of course, have their challenges. Ichigo, mainly, again, he just wanted to protect his family. He just wanted to protect his loved ones. That was it. He didn't care about being captain. He didn't care about, being all this kind of other shit that other characters focus with. And it makes him more relatable, I would say. He is more of a relatable character compared to the other two in terms of motivation and like how you would feel personal. Like I would strive to protect my family as much as he does, kind of deal. So I felt more of a connection with him than the other two from One Piece or Naruto or any Shonen Jump current going. And I don't know, like he's overhated just because he's not really a goofy character or has any big aspirations like the other ones. He's just, again, wants to protect his family. That's it. He wants to protect his family and make sure they're always safe, especially his friends and whatever. So It's just that he gets to be involved in all these big ass fights and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, um, I see him again more of a relatable character than any other shonen character there is out there, honestly. And he's just cool. He dresses cool. He looks cool. His powers are cool. It's yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, so we're moving on to question number 3, and this is talking about 3 prominent side characters that are your favorite in the Bleach storyline. But the caveat is that no Ichigo for this question, only the side characters. I'm gonna go first with this one. I think one character I really like is Kenpachi. His traits and the love for the thrill of battle. It's like, I'm gonna fight you and I'm gonna be the strongest, or I'm gonna get cut up like 5,000 times, still survive and beat you. This guy is a straight up monster. Literally, as Grimmy said in Thousand Year Blood War, he is a beast and he will not stop until the person is dead. In his case, it was all about imagination, and Kenpachi's like, you know what? Imagine this sword going right through you. It's the baddest, badass fucking thing you could ever imagine, and I love that so much. Next up is Yurichi. Now, I'm gonna be honest, out of all the female characters that I've watched so far, she is one of the more, balanced ones, where it's not too goofy and it's not too stupid at the same time. I felt like during the Soul Society arc, they had a hard time balancing that, and when we got to Arrancar with Orihime getting smacked around, and I was just kind of like, you're still gonna heal these Arrancar even if they beat you to the ever-living pulp. I'm just like, okay. After a certain point, it just got ridiculous. Yoruichi, on the other hand, she will beat someone's ass. She will not hesitate to fight to the last minute. And she's not within that annoying female archetype, which is, great for her, in my opinion. I think she's playful enough where it makes sense. And it also creates some hilarious moments because, well, it was a really funny scene, but her and Ichigo in the hot spring, and he's like, put some clothes on. What's wrong with you? And she's like, oh, I hate clothes. I can't stand them. And it's like, put some damn clothes on. So that little bit was just hilarious, and it culminated to that point, and I just thought it was funny. And the last character I really liked was Grimmjow. Grimmjow is, a true example of like a really good rival that Ichigo needed at the time, where someone needed to beat some sense into him as part of the Espada. Grimmjow was killing just legions of hollows and Arancars, and seeing how strong he could really become. And I like that he was the embodiment of that, and he thought that nobody could challenge him, fuck with him, etc. I also liked that he had this sort of complex where he had a bit of an ego, because when Ichigo hurt him, he was like, okay, there's no way this human could have done this to me. I'm gonna keep this scar on my chest to remind myself of this kid hurting me, so when I defeat him and kill him, it's gonna mean something. It's like a hunter hunting some prey. It's like he wants this to mean something. So I thought it was also cool he let Ichigo heal up by Orihime. He said, get up because it's one-on-one, it's time to go. And he's just one of those great fighter characters that you really will want in an anime, and I think they did that really well. It's not just this selfless sort of, oh, I have to immediately go to the good guy side or whatever. It takes some time and it builds up to that. I kind of like that. It's kind of a reminder of how Vegeta was at first, where he's like, no, I'm never gonna be on your side, blah blah blah, I'm gonna be the most powerful. And then all of a sudden, eventually over time, he learns from the protagonist trying to save him. So I thought that was a really good thing. Next up, we have Rocker. What is your 3 favorite characters within the history of Bleach?
All right, I'm actually on time for this one. But my first character that I like, who's considered side character, is Nanao. Shinsui's lieutenant and everything. Main reason I like her, she has to put up with the bullshit that Shinsui gets up to. if you can put up with the bullshit that he gets up to, you've got skills. And she also, as memory serves me correctly, is very, very proficient with, I do believe it is keto. Yep, it is keto. Yeah, it's just she's got a good comedic side and everything with her reactions to Shinsui's shenanigans. Serious side when she's putting up with his shenanigans, and yeah, it's just she's strong enough to put up with his bullshit, basically. A second character, I'd have to go with one of the Squad Zero members, Tenjiro Kurinji. He looks like a dork because he's got the help me out here, Ryan. What's the pompadour? There it is. He's got that big ass pointy pompadour, constantly chewing on a stick or whatever, and he just looks kind of goofy. But when push comes to shove, seeing as how he's a member of Zero Division, he can fuck you up. Then also he's very well versed in like the healing arts, seeing as how he was the one to basically teach Unohana all the healing techniques that she knows and everything. And he also gets Ichigo, Renji, Rukia, and Byakuya back into the fight through his through the hot springs that he has. And as for the last character, I'm gonna have to agree with you right on this. I gotta go with Kenpachi because when he's in the fight, so he's in the fight to have fun, kick your ass, and no matter what wound you give him, it's just gonna motivate him more and more and more to become stronger, so he can fuck you up, basically. And also, one last thing, I was wanting to chime in with this earlier when you said Kenpachi. I'm like, which one? Because there's multiple Kenpachi in the series.
The one we know and love and adore.
Kenpachi Zaraki.
Yes, the one we love.
Yeah. Then also he does show a. It may not be very visible, but he does give a shit about his subordinates and everything. He may not show it, but it's there.
It's basically like, I'm so tough, but I think a good episode that showed this was when he saw that Ikaku and the other guy that was with him, they really wanted to jump in and fight. I think it was Renji. And he's like, these guys are kind of embodying, my spirit. Let's go in and let's take these like hollow out. That is a show of like faith in his men and his comrades, and it really showed through combat. They were the ones that adopted that, so to speak. So I thought that was a really touching teaching moment that a lot of people probably will overlook, but I saw it clear as day.
And the last thing I have to say, for me, an honorable mention would be the first Kenpachi, Unohana. I'll elaborate on that one more in the post show and everything if I decide to attend.
Okay.
But yeah, that's what I got to say.
All right, no problem. Ronan, 3 prominent characters that you like in Bleach. Go ahead.
It has to be Kenpachi. I have to agree with all of you, Kenpachi, that he is a savage in battle. He loves to fight, but you can also learn something from him because he actually is very kind to his subordinates and all the people, the rest of him, even to people who is weaker than him. He actually shows like a compassionate side to him, despite the bloodthirsty monster that he is. A second character is Uryu Ishida, the Quincy. I like him because he is a different kind of how to put it, not really a Sasuke to Ichigo, more of a Piccolo. Like first started off as Ichigo's enemy, now he's one of Ichigo's closest allies and still friends. And even though, the Thousand Year Blood War is still going on and, trying to win Uryu back, he still thinks of Ichigo as his friend, even despite he is an enemy to Quincy's. The third character and the final character I actually kind of like is Captain Byakuya Kuchiki. Like he is big brother energy. Like the dude is brother energy. Guy's compassionate, despite him being kind of a smart ass. He is compassionate and very kind to his subordinates, especially to his sister Rukia. And he actually shows like very, very, very good signs to like Ichigo. Like during the Thousand Year Blood War, he was the one crying, pleading, begging Ichigo to save the Soul Society from Yuhaba. And he was very, very passionate. So when you see that side of Byakuya, you actually see like he's actually, despite his Itachi like personality, he's actually pretty dynamic and very kind. Honorable mention has to go to Orihime. Yes, I know. Yes, I'm aware she's the healer, Kurosaki-ku and all that other shit. But I will say this proudly. She is a better female character than Sakura Haruno from Naruto.
He's a shot fired to another anime. Okay. Well, next we have Sanjin. What is your 3 favorite prominent characters?
All right, so the first one is going to come completely by surprise to absolutely no one, but hopefully the other 2 are a little more interesting. Going to be a little different from everyone mentioning Kenpachi, as my first prominent side character is, of course, Sajin Komomura. So a little bit of rivals with all the Kenpachi Zaraki fans because of some run-ins every now and then. But just like, I don't know, just ever since he had that first fight with Kenpachi Zaraki during the Soul Society arc, and his helmet got destroyed, and we revealed that wonderful face, I was obsessed, of course. I've always been drawn to animalistic characters, and the thing with like, especially with a show like this, where just everyone's humanoid, except for, well, whatever Mayori Kuratsuchi is, but we're not going to worry about that right now. But just like everyone's humanoid except for him, and it's just like, why put like so much focus on him, and then he's like not even the main character. And so I just got obsessed with him and just clung to him and found out all kinds of things. He came in a real influential time, as you can tell from my name and my gamer tags and everything. He was the style at the time when I was just setting those up, and just kind of made it my whole gamer identity, basically, because of that. And just like, just like, as I said, he's not like a main character. He's not essentially part of the main cast in a lot of ways, but I mean, we do get a decent amount of moments with him. The moments we do get are really great, like the emotion and a lot of his fights with Tosen and stuff at a later time, which I can talk about later. And so just like everything we did get was great, and then everything we didn't get, I wanted to know more. Some fun lesser known facts about him: he's actually really good at hand-to-hand combat, which doesn't come up incredibly often, but he did like judo throw like Shonen Pao during the Fake Karakura Town arc and some stuff like that, and some lesser fights. It comes up a little bit. And I found out his least favorite food is apparently carrots, as apparently his father once told him the carrots are not for their kind, which I find very fun. But but now for some slightly more interesting and unexpected picks, I would think. Second, at some point I would have put like Toshiro Hitsugaya on this list, as he's likely my second favorite captain. But I chose to go in a different direction. So a character I really like is Yumichika Ayasagawa, who is the 5th seat in Squad 11 under Ikkaku and always buddies around with Ikkaku a lot. He's really interesting to me, particularly because of the really intimate relationship he seems to have with his Zanpakuto. As for those who don't know, it's normally apparently a Keto type Zanpakuto, but he's in Squad 11 under Kenpachi Zaraki, which is very much emphasizes like physical attack capability. So what Yumichika does that's interesting is he purposely mispronounces the name of his Zanpakuto, and that manages to change the ability of the Zanpakuto. And I just found that fascinating because like that just opens up a whole world of possibilities. Like could every other Soul Reaper with a Zanpakuto just mispronounce their shit and get completely different abilities? But just like and just like all kinds of other things and like he wanted to be the third seat because he liked how the kanji looked the most, but Ikaku's in that seat, and so he's like, fine, I'll be fifth seat because it looks closest to that. And then like his Zanpakuto apparently has a favorite and least favorite color, which is apparently very unusual. He like purposely like spites the Zanpakuto by like wrapping the handle in like its least favorite color to just like change its abilities and things like that too. And I just found that all very interesting from him. And then to get like even a little more obscure, Rojiro Otoribashi is a character I felt was really underutilized. If you're not familiar with the name, he is the visored that he's got like the long blonde or orangish hair. His Zanpakuto is Kinshara, and he would make a lot of musical references. Which is part of the reason why I like him. Being a little musically inclined myself, I made that association and connection with him. Aside from that, I do just really like his Zanpakuto, and his Hollow Mask was very interesting too. It gave this whole like Plague Doctor kind of vibe to it. So he was very interesting. Maybe not like the best personality, but he just had usefulness and like maybe 2 or 3 brief moments and some arcs, and it was definitely a character that could have been utilized more.
All right, Shug, what about you? What is your 3 favorite prominent characters within Bleach?
All right. Cool. So I wanted to go unique also, and I wanted to say Sajin, but he, of course, he beat me to it, so I'm not really surprised. And Kenpachi, of course, everybody loves Kenpachi, but I might go with somebody different. So one of these characters that I really like off the bat, he just looks cool. Is Chad. I think Chad is like a very cool looking dude, and it's nice that he kind of aspires to just do the same thing as Ichigo to protect his friends, family, and make sure they're safe and all that kind of stuff. So like even just anybody random he will save, kind of deal. He's one of those kind of people that are just they look like huge monsters but are just the gentle giants. And I was a big fan of him. I still am, and like it's one of these characters that I'm very disappointed that he was very limited on his screen time. Kind of wish he had more stuff to do besides like 2 or 3 fights, that were kind of one-sided at times. And I feel like he's very overlooked, mainly because he's just a side dude that's just not as powerful as Ichigo or any of the other people in the group of the main characters. But I think he still looks cool. His abilities are fucking badass. His transformations with his arms are cool, and I don't know. He's just a very cool character, and I like what he's all about. It's just pretty much Ichigo, but taller and darker skinned. And yeah, I enjoy his character. He's a very comforting character, I would say. Um, Another character that I enjoy a lot, and it's probably one of these like just so weird characters that you just gotta love, and it's Mayuri. Mayuri is just such a unique character because of how he dresses, how the way that he uses his Sanpakuto. He's always changing that son of a bitch, making it look different, making it do different things, and he always just adapts to any situation that he's in ahead of time. And it's basically more of like a crazier Urahara. So you know, it's again one of those characters that it's just so weird that he's just cool. So weird that he's cool, and I love him because he's just so petty. He's very petty and just goes very extreme with things, especially his clothing. So I like him just because of his style, basically. And a third character is kind of tough because I would go with other different ones that would like be main characters and whatnot, but like going off of like side people basically. I would say Shuhei. Shuhei is a pretty neat dude. Um, he's again one of these characters that when I looked at him, I was like, this dude looks badass. I like him. And just the way that his character is, I like it. You know, he always aspires to be as great as his superiors. You know, he had Tozen and he also had Kenshin. I forget his name. Kensei. And so, you know, he always aspires to be as cool as them or as powerful as them or to be on par with them. And so you always see that he gets sidelined a lot, mainly on that like Karakura invasion. But I feel that whenever he got his own kind of like novel in Can't Feed Your Own World, I think he expanded more as a character, and I like the way that he was written in that series. So kind of make me it made me like him even more because of the type of character that he is. He's just a dude that just wants to, you know, chill. You know, he likes you know, basically runs the newspaper or the magazine in his squad, and he likes music. He plays the guitar. He likes things from the world of the living so much that he takes them with him. He even has a motorcycle that he doesn't know how to ride. You know, so like he has many things that he enjoys, but when you look at him, you don't really think he's that kind of character that has his own just simple enjoyments in life, you know? So I don't know. Again, cool character, cool looking dude, interesting dynamic that he has with specific characters, especially his captains and other captains too, because he actually gets very I would say not attached but inspired by these other captains too. And honorable mention, either Toshiro or did I say a third? I don't remember if I even said a third character, but it's whatever. And Shunsui. I think Shunsui is like a pretty chill dude, you know. He's one of these like unique characters that is just, hey, I'm gonna be serious as hell, but don't fuck with me while I get serious kind of deal. So you know, it's one of those characters that I also like enjoy watching a lot and getting to know in terms of like how the shows and all the all their episodes and their fights and all that kind of stuff develops and as it all goes through.
Okay, so the next few questions are gonna be kind of long ones, but you know what? Fuck it, let's go. So this is about listing your favorite and least favorite Zanpakuto and Shikai releases. You can also place any honorable mention about your favorite sort of release style, whether it's a fighting style, magic. There's Zanjutsu, which is weapon arts. There's Hakuda, which is martial arts. Ho-Ho, which is movement. And Kido, which is magic. I'm gonna have Zanjin go first.
Ooh, thank you very much. Shikai releases. So like I don't know why these are like the hardest questions to me. It always feels like I'm missing an obvious one or like would have like an entirely different list like a week or something from now. But favorite Shikai releases, again, no surprise here, but it actually won't come up in the Bankai one. But Sajin's Tenkin release. In the Shikai, it's just basically summon what part of the giant that you want, usually the sword arm, and just use that without any concern for damaging yourself. And it gives you greater strength, greater range, and can just be utilized in a lot of cool ways. And definitely a more underutilized one, and I just do like the implications and uses for it. I've also really liked, I've always really liked Suzume Bachi, Soy Phones, and how it turns into just like basically like the ring blade that's on her finger, and how it just sort of sets up like a mechanic of like if she hits the same place, then it's apparently instant death. But I just, it's very fitting for her, and I've always liked the look and aesthetic of it. Izuru's Wabisuke is also really cool. Just how much it sticks out, which is like the hook blade of it, and then just how the ability works, and then how he eventually uses it. Like just if you hit something with it, it doubles the weight. But the point of that is, like with its name being the penitent one, he's trying to get people to kneel and then use the hook blade to like cut their head off. And so there's a like a connection there, like a follow through with like how the ability is used. Also, like Zabimaru Renji's is an obvious one. How the blade looks in Shikai form is probably like the most iconic Shikai, to be honest. I've also really liked the Higazako ability with it, where like even if the blade gets dismembered, he can still control like the detached fragments of it and still have them attack the opponent. And so that double purpose or that extra utilization there is cool. Going a little more recent with Thousand Year Blood War, Ichibei Hyosube's Ichimonji is really interesting too, just being able to cover things in black ink and get their powers reduced. Rojiro Otoribashi with Kinshara, it basically turns into like a gold whip with like a barbed end. But he also has like, he can also like tap the whip and almost do like musical like pulses that go through it and can damage things that way, so that's really cool. If I going by like the Zanpakuto themselves, basically, fun fact, one of the like first things I ever added to like an Amazon wish list or anything was like replica Bleach swords. But like if I had to narrow it down to like swords I would actually want to own, I kind of wanted Rojiro's Kinshara, and then Byakuya's Senbon Sakura, or Hitsugaya's Hyorin Maru would be like the big three. For least favorites, I gotta be honest, like Ichigo's Sangetsu does like, we all just kind of like forget that his sword is almost permanently in Shikai now. Because like the whole first season he had like the more slightly normal looking version of the sword that just like gets forgotten about, and then he just kind of always has it in Shikai release, and it just doesn't really have like an interesting ability. But everyone remembers him for the Bankai version, obviously. If you've ever seen Sajin's Lieutenant Tetsuzaimon and his, we don't really know what his Shikai does. I don't believe. I think we've gone like the entire series without finding out, but if you've ever seen like the released form, it just kind of looks like a cheap version of Renji's. It's just like we ran out of ideas for what to have the swords look like. And then for another least favorite, probably Ikaku's spear. It just doesn't really seem as useful, and I believe in combat it's actually like shattered and broken apart a lot. But then for a certain like style of ability, basically everything aside from Zanjutsu has been like underutilized. Ho-Oh I guess gets brought up a lot with Flash Step and Shunpo and things like that. There are enough characters that make that their forte or their specification for you to be reminiscent or to keep that in your head. Hakuda's pretty underrated. There's not a whole lot of hand-to-hand combat going on in all this weapon-based fighting. But then the big one that I've always thought has been super underrated is Kido. Kido is so complex that I feel personally that it could stand as like, it could be in a completely separate anime or manga, and it could be the only power system in that anime or manga, and there would still be enough to it. Because there's just so many different variations of it. There's Bakudo and another one that the name escapes me right now, but there's like two different kinds within that. There's like 100 if not hundreds of spells, variations and uses for like what they're for and when you use them. They have these crazy incantations that are like reciting entire poems, but you can also just say like this number and the name of the spell, or just do it without any incantation, and it can sacrifice some of the power. And there's a whole system to it, and I just feel like it gets buried entirely among like all the other things, and especially in things like Thousand Year Blood War, where it's just like, oh, the captains can't use their Bankai anymore. Well, maybe use some Keto or like something instead of just like vague sword fighting in the middle. But that's basically my thoughts on that.
All right, I guess I'll go next. Let's see, favorites Shikai or Zanpakuto. I'm gonna say it's Aizen's Kyoka Shugetsu Shatter, where he just basically messes with like people's five senses, and he can shatter the illusion of perception anytime he wants. Now, the funniest thing is that he can hold someone in that for the longest time and they never know what happened. I think a good example was I was watching like a video essay of this where they were in an area where there were dead bodies and nobody knew the entire time that Aizen and Gen really murdered those people until he like shattered it completely, and then it's like, oh, it's a massacre now down here. So I really like that a lot. It can really just manipulate opponents. It can manipulate the Almighty, which is like super OP in Thousand Year Blood War. It's really great. It can also lead to cold-hearted moments because sometimes Aizen likes to fuck with like Hisugaya. So he's like, I'm just gonna put Momo like right in the way and let you stab her, and I'm gonna make him even more madder in the process. So it is a completely illusionary weapon where you can use other people against others and they will never know. My least favorite, I don't like Zabumaru, I'm sorry. I feel like, okay, the design is really cool, like this large snake-like blade. It's really awesome to see it in action sometimes, but every single time, I think it was a little bit after the Soul Society arc, it just gets stomped. Like, it gets canceled out. People throw it away. I think someone actually broke it in a wrong car. They broke that thing to pieces like twice. So I'm just like, well, what is the point really? It's kind of a little bit worthless, honestly, at certain points. So that's kind of how I felt about it. And as for favorite styles, I'm gonna say Hakuda is underrated, just like Sanjin did, because when Ichigo comes back to save Rukia from, the flaming bird killing her in Soul Society, he uses a little bit of that on captains, and he completely floored like most of them with Hakuda. So I'm like, this dude would probably be like really good at hand to hand. Even Chad says he's a really good fighter with his hands. It's kind of a little bit disappointing that we don't see a little bit more of that, or Ichigo at least learning it. But hey, it's a series about swords, so what can you do? It's just an underrated style in my opinion. If I went with my favorite sort of like arts in this series, I have to go with Keto, because it's a lot you can do with it, a lot of magic spells being thrown out there that's really useful. And one of my favorites is Hado number 90, which is Kuro Hisugi. Aizen uses it. He puts someone into a purple and black coffin and he crushes them. He did this with Sanjin, and just to see that in the fake Kurakura Town arc, where he just like crushes the shit out of him and just all this blood just starts pouring out, like, oh damn, this is actually pretty cool. And then he tried it on Ichigo at his Dangai state, and he was like, no, it's not working on me. I'm gonna break out of this. Against a strong opponent, it doesn't have big advantages, but against someone that's like, a little bit weaker at the time, yeah, I could definitely just put them in the box and crush them. So that's my favorite one, is Hado number 90. And that is my answer on favorite Shikai and Zanpakuto. Ronan, it is your turn. How do you feel about question number 4?
Well, I have to say, favorite Shikai, definitely Byakuya. I really love his abilities, Zenbon Zakura Kageyoshi, or his Bankai or Shikai. Like, I really love that because it reminds me so much of, like, it's literally just a whole bunch of swords made of his own, spiritual energy, and you can use them to kill. And he only uses that mode to Sworn to Kill because he used that against Ichigo, used it against that I forgot his name, in a Rankar, and he just embarrassed him with it. He even used it on Yami when he was on his resurrection, and and everything else. Another one is definitely, I'm surprised no one has ever mentioned this, but Ichigo's Fullbring Shikai. Like, I'm surprised no one's ever mentioned his Fullbring Shikai. Like, everyone brags about his like Hollow Mass, his True Shin Bunkai, but I really like his Fullbring Shikai because it looks amazing. Like, it looks badass. Like, it look his old Shikai was kind of cool, but really love that. Zanpakuto, I had to agree with Rin on this one. Kyoga Sugetsu is amazing, very very amazing. Ability to ability to fuck with all your senses, put you in illusions. A lot of, as for, I say, what was the sword technique called again, Ren?
Which one for Aizen?
No. For like style, like fighting styles.
It's
like
called
hand-to-hand.
it's called Hakuda for hand to hand.
Hakuda and Senkin is also another good one. Kido is also cool because Kido has a lot of good abilities like healing, destroying things. Favorite one, like you, Ren. Well, I had to say Aizen's two Kidos, Kurohitsugi and Haro 99, Goryu Tenmetsu. Really cool ability. Least favorite Shikai. Man. I have to say, I really have to say soy phones. Like, I get an instant death chain for an assassin, but really, against, you didn't even use that against a guy who's literally about rotting people to death. And I mean, let's be real here. Is anyone really gonna get hit by that, knowing they're faster than light speed?
Oh no, any good
So,
ho kind of cancels out what Soifon does.
Yeah. So technically, Soifon's Shikai or Bankai, like, I really do not like it. It's kind of boring. Another least favorite is Madarame, Ieko Madarame, because he keeps his Bankai a secret. His Shikai Hosoki Maru. It's kind of, it kind of gets stomped out. It's kind of like how to put it? It's kind of like it's kind of hard to pronounce it. It just gets beaten by every single either Resurrection, Bankai, Shikai, Kido, or anything like that. Despite its cool name, Hosoki Maru, it's kind of lame. Really, another one I like is Nozarashi. Nozarashi was Kenpachi's sword. Pretty cool, and also his command is sick. Drink Nozarashi. That is badass to me.
Shug, what about you? What's your favorite Shikai, and do you have any honorable mentions for release styles?
Man. So Shikai, there's a lot. And one of them is one of these unique ones, which was mentioned earlier, which was Wabiska. Wabiska is like one of those like swords that you look at it and it's like you don't really see much of an advantage or any kind of use to this kind of blade until you see how it works, And I just love the way that Kira uses it, and I think it was the battle for Karakura Town where he fights the one Arankar that flies. That's like a fucking bird. He completely murders that son of a bitch. So, I love the way that he used it there. And it's just like I kind of established him as like one of those like underground cool characters. You know, it's like he's pretty badass. He just doesn't look it. Um, and whenever he pops in back again after getting bodied in the Thousand Year Blood War, they made it so cool. You know, they made it just so cool the way he popped in. But I kind of wish there was more. So I'm really hoping in the anime they actually kind of expand a little bit more what he did after he just respawned out of nowhere. Um, Another one that I like would be uh man, be Kazushini. Kazushini's for with Shuhei's blade. You know, it goes from a katana to just two full blown kamas basically, and or sides, whatever you want to call it, really. And they're just so badass the way he uses them, especially with the chains and how he just flings them around and kind of the way that he has uh his dominance over this weapon, but he doesn't like it. So there's like many. I like the strange looking swords. Basically, I do enjoy those, and there's really not enough of them. And then when there's some of them, they just I don't know. I don't really like them that much. That's my problem with Yumichika's the Rurikujaku. Um, Especially when you really look at it, the way that he just completely not names it after what it's supposed to be, and for it to just get annoyed and pissed off at him, it makes it look ugly. And it's like I don't really like it. It's like I don't like it. It just looks stupid. I don't see much use to it. But whenever he actually uses the correct name in the Karakura arc, it looks cool. It looks badass. It's like it's one of those blades that you really didn't expect it to work how he displays it, basically, where it just absorbs your power kind of deal. If I remember correctly. So like it's a fairly overpowered Shikai. Um then another one that I was not a big fan of, which was Tetsuzaimon's, the little bucktooth sword. I don't know what the hell it is about. Nobody does. I don't really care. I don't even know how this man is captain. So, it's one of these like he looks badass, but you don't really know what the fuck he does. He's just boring, and it's just sad because he just looks badass, but he's just boring as hell. And another one that just looked dumb whenever he did it, and just for him to get bodied by Ichigo and the Saving Rukia, which was Sasakibe's Gonryumaru, which is like the little it turns into a rapier, and all he does is like a little thing on the side, and that's it. It looked stupid, it looked dumb, and he did nothing with it. He got bodied instantly. So it's one of those that just like, hey, didn't really appear for much, and when it did, it was eh. Um, I would say for like these forms that don't really get used a lot would be the hand to hand. I think for sure the hand to hand would have been so much cooler if it was used a lot more, especially by the main two characters that kind of just talk shit about them being the most powerful at this certain kind of style of fighting. It kind of gets overshadowed by everything else, and it only really pops up when it's really needed, and even then it still gets kind of just swept away to the side. um and for sure the Keto's always cool as hell, and like someone said earlier, you can probably make a whole damn show about it, and the power scaling would be even cooler, and it'd be a lot easier to figure out how powerful these characters are. And I think there's like over 100 or so of known ones to have, but you could probably do a lot more than that and create a whole separate show, So yeah, um, yeah, it's pretty much my two honorable mentions and my least favorite and my favorite ones. Yeah.
Rocker, are you back?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We're on question number 5, so we're talking about what is your favorite and least favorite Shikai releases, and also if you have any sort of honorable mentions you want to mention with the style releases, which is Zanjutsu, Hakuda, Ho-Ho, and Keto.
All right. I'm gonna start off with least favorite Zanpakuto / Shikai release, I'm gonna have to say for that, I'm going with Renji's Zabimaru. I mean, when he releases to a Shikai, it looks cool. It's basically a sword with a lot of spikes and shit, and you can basically turn it into a whip. Kind of similar to what this is diving off into a whole nother series, but Ivy from Soul Calibur, how she uses a sword whip, basically. Yeah, it's good for keeping your opponent at range and everything, but what is that really gonna do in like a serious fight and everything? Yeah, you're keeping them at range, but you don't know if your opponent, or Renji's opponent in this case, has any sort of a ranged attack that basically be like, haha, fuck you. You may be keeping me at range, but I excel at ranged fighting. And everything. That's really all I got to say for that. But for favorite Shikai release, I gotta go with my boy Shinji with Sakanade and everything. It messes with your senses. Because excuse me. Like I said, for that, it messes with your senses. Up is down, left is right. If you don't have control of your senses in a fight, it's going to be extremely difficult to fight back and everything. If you know what I'm trying to get and everything, and it's going to be hard to fight back because you could go to swing and do an attack, and you just miss by a fucking mile and everything. And for my favorite, magic or whatever you want to call it, I have to go with Ho-Ho, because being able to be more mobile on the battlefield, it gives you so much more opportunities to strike, retreat, take a moment to catch your breath, and being able to get in a lot closer, so that way your attacks can be hit a little bit harder and everything. If you can understand that is. Hello?
I'm still here. I was just waiting for you to finish. But yeah, I, as a symptom of reading so fast, that was the end of question 4. This is the real question 5, which is the Bankai. So, what is your favorite and least favorite Bankai releases of the series? And Rocker, I want to go first with you.
Oh goddamn! I'm going right off the bat.
Yep.
I'm gonna lead off with least favorite. I'm gonna have to go with Soifan's Jaken Raikoben. Her first part of it, Suzumibachi, that instant death and everything, that leads more into the stealth corps that she's the captain of. 2 pokes basically in the same spot, you're dead. Her Bankai turns into a giant fuck off missile, which is the antithesis of stealthy, if you know what I'm saying. Because you think little tiny Soifan, stealthy as fuck, is going to have a related Bankai. Nope. It's basically a fucking missile. And as for favorite Bankai, as cliche as it might say, I'm going to have to go with fucking Yamamoto's Zanka no Tachi. Because it's got 4 different fucking forms. You got the form where it condenses all of his flames along the edge of his sword, and if it makes contact with something, as we see in the opening a few episodes of the 1,000-Year Blood War, that shit is gone. because when he first when he first went Bankai against Yuhua, sorry if I mispronounced that wrong. When the edge of Zanka no Tachi hits the floor, everything in front of it is gone. And everything. Then I don't remember which Zanka no Tachi it is, east, west, north, south, but the flame cloak, where it basically prevents the opponent from getting close to him. How can you fight back against somebody when you can't even get close to him? And then the other one is the ability to resurrect the souls, bodies, or whatever, of everybody that Zanka no Tachi has killed, which he used to great effect against Yuhua, because he summoned back all the Quincy's and everything that he murked back during the first Quincy invasion and everything before the Thousand-Year Blood War. And it's just, goddamn, you would not think Old Man Yama would have that level of, I mean, obviously he's going to have that level of power, but if you didn't know anything about him and you saw what he could do with his Bankai to do, you wouldn't think that. And also another effect that I like is the effect that it has on everybody else when he activates it. Because if you notice, when he activates it, everything just goes white and dry. People's lips start cracking. People notice it, and then I don't remember who said it, but if he doesn't finish this quick, his Bankai could potentially destroy the Soul Society and everything. But one last thing, then I'm done. My runner-up for this would have to be going back to my boy Shinji's Bankai, Sakashima, Yokoshima, Happo, Fusagari, where it just fucks shit up. And that's really all I got for that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next up is Sanjin. What is your favorite and least favorite Bankai release?
Much like the Shikai, it's still a hard question, and I feel like I'm either missing something obvious or we'll have like a completely different list if asked at a later time. But I'm also like not all the way through, it should be noted, so I haven't seen like the late Thousand-Year Blood War stuff, so I haven't seen like Shuhei or Izuru's Bankais yet. Looking forward to them. For favorites, as I believe Rocker said, the Yamamoto variations, which is a little unfair because he's got like 4 different ones, but like reviving like all the dead people, and that's just so raw. It's so cool that he can do that. Renji's Hihio Zabimaru was really good too. Was one of the like early ones that really stuck out. Of course, Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi, Byakuya Kuchiki was the one for a while. Just like how visually interesting it is when he first activates it, like holding the blade upside down and just letting it drop, and it goes into the floor, and then brings like the pillars of swords up behind him, and then the whole, you've seen it, but just it's really, really cool. More recently, one of the highlights of Thousand-Year Blood War to me so far has been Rukia's Bankai, the Haka no Togame. But just like how her power just kind of leveled up in that area and was really cool, and like even Byakuya complimenting her is like, oh, it's a beautiful Bankai. That was really great. That was a great moment. Rojiro Toribashi, mentioning him again, his was interesting. It was briefly activated, although it didn't. The opponent had a foil for it, but it seemed to work similar to Senjumaru Shutara's, who was in Squad Zero and like the Fabric Lady, the one who actually got to use hers. Although it probably won't end up working based on how Thousand-Year Blood War is going. But both of those Bankai are very interesting and multifaceted, and just seem to be about like trapping people and succumbing them to like not like their worst fears or like certain elements or something. It's almost like a saw puzzle or like putting them in an escape room. It's basically the same energy. But for least favorite, this may bother people, but I have to go with Ichigo's, but hear me out on this. There's a couple things to it. Like, first off, it's like the most used Bankai in the entire show. So it becomes pretty milquetoast and basic. And it was already kind of like not interesting, and at least in my opinion, it just kind of makes him look how like his normal Soul Reaper form should be, where his sword finally looks like other people's swords. And so it's just kind of normal, whereas the other one should be the Shikai and Bankai, perhaps. How did they get away with like the Suba, or like the guard on his release Zanpakuto, being like a swastika, by the way? I don't know how they got away with that. But yeah, just like for how basic, like it's still cool, but just like I'm picking it as a least favorite because like it does the least visually, and it aesthetically, or like by appearance, it's like how he should normally look as a Soul Reaper, in my opinion.
All right, I guess I'll go next. So I have a couple that I like. I'm going to say, you know, even if it kind of looks generic, I kind of like the capabilities behind this. It is Ichigo's true Bankai, the Tensa Zangetsu. I just the damage this thing does is almost unprecedented. I mean, it's basically the blade is me sword, essentially a mixture of Ichigo's like Shinigami and his hollow powers combined into this big ass blade. It's basic, but it gets the job done because the Bankai can do this insane one-hit kill property. It's basically like this yellow Getsuga Tensho, and as soon as it hits someone, they're dead. It's undeniable. The power of that thing is super fucking OP if it touches anybody. And I really like it. I really enjoy that you could just swing that thing one time and someone's just done. Another one I like is the true Bankai of Renji. Now we see over 1,000 Year Blood War that his sort of release, as they call it, over the series was not his true release with the snake that had the sort of, I don't know, wood? I don't know what the fuck that was, but I know he throws the snake around, it shoots something at certain points, and he called that his Bankai, and then they told him, oh, that's not your real Bankai, this is your real Bankai, after he talked to Ichibei. And then when he got it the first time against that luchador wrestler, I just thought it was amazing. It's like he has like a giant, it almost looks like Hisagaya's, but it's like a lot more mechanical, and the snake is like infused into his arm, and he gets that giant blade, and then he cuts the wrestler with it, and then he blows him to smithereens. That is how you do it for a cool Bankai release. In my opinion, it really just made up for some of the shit ones that Renji got in the past, or even it's like Shikai, which is not really, you know, the most fantastic after a certain while. So I thought that was a cool comeback for that. And then my other favorite Bankai is from Old Man Yama, which is the Zaka no Tachi. I think that thing just decimates on like so many levels, because not only, it's like Rocker said, not only does it guard the old man, not only can it make the degrees like 15K in Celsius, because they were explaining it sucks out all the air. It's so hot that the entire like Sarate could be destroyed like at any minute if he keeps going. And another thing is that if the if the like end of the blade hits you, you will get burnt out of existence, which is why, you know, the fake Yuhaba got like completely torn in half as soon as it hit him. It's that strong. It's a one-hit kill order. That's just another one that I like so much, where even the clone of Yuhaba was complaining that, oh, if I You know, I got all this blue vein. If I didn't have that on, I'd be melted into pieces. The battle would be over. And he had a hard time dealing with it. So yeah, it is something that cannot be fucked with. And just seeing that it raises the corpses of the dead, and it sort of has a mental perception where it messes with the person. People are raising from the dead, all the people you killed, blah blah blah. And it can also do some sort of psychological damage to you as well, which I really enjoy. So that can serve as like a distraction, and I really enjoyed that. As for a Bankai I did not enjoy, I'm gonna have to say Ikaku again with the Dragon Crest. I think this thing is just okay. It's just 3 extra blades. That's it, and you get a little bit of attack power. It's just the lamest looking one so far. You would expect like a lot more, like something, maybe something fused with a skin or something like that. No, it's just 3 swords and he throws it, and that's it. It just looks very underwhelming. Like why you do this to this man? He has like the worst Bankai in my opinion. So I just think that could have been done much better, but as you can see, there's still good Bankais out there. Just look for them. And that is my answer to that. So Ronan, it is your turn. What is your favorite and least favorite Bankai?
I would have to say Shin Bankai's Ichigo. Ichigo's Shin Bankai, and yes, I believe it or not, it's just called Tensei but I like to give it Shin Tensei because Shin means true. So I had to say that one's my personal favorite Bankai. One of my personal favorites because it's literally fate itself. He's literally cutting fate itself. Like it's literally just saying destiny, fate, fuck all that. I'm gonna solve everything with one blow. And I loved it. And I love every single second of it. And plus the design looks amazing, especially with the Horn of Salvation. Like the whole thing, even Yuhaba was even scared of it. Like he even said, this sword could end me. This sword could end all what Quincy stand for. So why do you think he had to destroy it the first time he saw it? Even though that was, illusion, but we're not gonna get into that. I have to say, Byakuya, I would say again, Byakuya's Zenbon Zakura a really good one. Especially his ultimate technique where he's just a literal 1/ Shuke Hakuteken. Pretty cool ability. Omen Yama is another good Bankai. Literally the flames of hell itself. It literally looks like the flames of hell and the sun itself fuse into one and literally like erase your whole existence with 1/. Love that. Least favorite, I hate to say it, Madarame, but you kind of got the end of the stick. Despite you, the only cool thing about you, Madarame, is your name, the name of this Bankai, Ryuman Hozaki Maru. You can't tell me that name does not sound badass. Another least favorite is also Soy Phones. Yeah, despite your being all about stealth and instant death, a missile, like you couldn't get anything better. All you get is a missile. Kind of lame. It's kind of eliminates the whole stealth, and maybe that's the reason why your ass is killed. Maybe there's a reason why your ass is kicked every single time by Yoroichi. But anyway, another if I had to say honorable mention, Bankai, it's Toshiro Hitsugai's Daigaranhi Horimaru. Pretty cool. I mean, Ice Dragon. What can you go wrong with that? It's literally an ice dragon. And it's literally the coldest Zanpakuto in the Soul Society, even rivaling Rukia's. So yeah, that's my answer right there.
Shug, how about you? What is your favorite and least favorite Bankai?
So I don't really know how we're gonna categorize these. I know we basically have gathered them into terms of usefulness. I mainly look at them and how they, I don't know, how are they portrayed. Most of them, some of them are not really the ones that you guys have mentioned. Because like for me, I picked like 5 total ones that I like, 5 that I don't like. It'll probably be even longer if I would sit down and probably switch around a lot because you can't really just sit here, really pick a favorite for sure. But like number one for sure to me would be the Katen Kyokatsu, which is the Shunsui one, and his shit is pretty cool. The way that it pretty much already his regular like Shikai is his Shikai already is in terms of what it does. It's kind of weird, like it implements games into the ability itself. But then whenever he activates the Bankai itself, it turns into this kind of theater or theater of suicide is what they call that chapter. Or the chapter in his fight was. So, it's like this type of one-hit Bankai that should work off the bat and should be a one-hit kill, but it was not in the end. But overall, it's one of those Bankais that everybody was really hoping to see, and we got it. And I'm waiting for it to get animated, and I will screech like anybody probably because it is just beautiful the way it was drawn, and just witnessing it happen and how it's used. It's just interesting, and I love it. And number 2 would be Ashisoge Jizo from Mayuri, which again, it's one of those unique looking ones that kind of just like, hey, but this was just freaky as hell. It's just a baby that throws poison or a fat baby that can, destroy things with more poison. So, Mayuri always pops in and is always something different whenever he says his Bankai. For sure, he uses it in most of his fights, but it always looks different. It's not always the same thing. It does different things because he modifies it. So it's just always one of those very interesting ones that you see a lot more of, but it's just very interesting. It's just weird. It fits the character so much that it's just like not surprising of what it does. Another would be Kanon Biraki, which is Urahara's Bankai. His again, it's one of those that just looks beautiful whenever they showed it in the drawings, and the giant lady that fixes things, or reassembles or whatever the hell it does. I would need to reread it again and see what exactly it does. But it's one of those that again, you never really see this character ever use it, and once he does, it's like holy shit, this looks cool. He's even more badass than I thought. So it's again one of those bankais that you're just waiting to see animated at this point. Number 4 would be Zankano Tachi, which it's Yamamoto. Everybody loves that old man, and that old man is badass. His power is insane. R.I.P. And this one's from the novels, which is Fushi no Kojo, which is Shuhei's. Shuhei's Bankai is pretty interesting. It's very the ability itself is just to lower lower your spiritual pressure until you die kind of deal. It's like it's again one of those quote unquote suicidal abilities where it's either you or me kind of deal, and it'll bring you down with me. And it's just a pretty badass thing to like the way that it's portrayed in the novel. No, it does not appear in the 1,000-Year Blood War. It's a novel thing, unless they randomly put it in, of course. But it'd be very interesting to see if they actually do animate it in the Blood War, which would be cool as hell. Because in the drawing itself, it looks badass, So yeah. For my least favorite, again, sorry about the long list, but my least favorite number 1 would be Tekken Tachikaze from Kensei. I love Kensei, but the way that he uses Bankai, I get what it does, but it's like the way that it was used, it basically he got so outplayed it's not even funny. And it's just sad because he's again one of those badass characters that you don't really get to see show off a lot. And him and Rose got really bodied in that whole encounter, I would say. Then another one would be Hihio Sabimaru, which is like the original Renji Bankai. Again, it was ass. We all know it was trash. But it looked cool. You know, it looked cool still, but it was just not really what I don't know. It didn't really fit the character. If you want me to be really honest with you, now that we see the Zol and the way that he uses it, it fits it more. You know, it just lunging, grabbing, throwing, and just exploding people basically. And it was just badass the way he used it. This other one, it's not that I don't like it because it's really pretty and it's like very cool the way that it was used, of course, which is Hakano Togame, which is Rukia's. Rukia's Bankai is cool as hell, but I see it more as a kind of a disadvantage if it doesn't kill the person that she's fighting. Because if it's not a one hit kill, it's, you know, you're kind of just standing there and you can't really move because if she does move, she'll either shatter into a million pieces or just, you know, exactly. It's more of a like a last resort kind of deal, you know. So it's cool, it's pretty, but I see it as not really that. Yeah, it's a glass cannon. It's not really useful in like a big fight kind of deal unless the person's caught off guard or is just to the point of just like, hey, I give up, but I'm gonna try to do one last hit kind of deal. So you know, last resort. And OG Tenzo Sangetsu, that thing looked ass after like the 100th time you see it. You know, it becomes so basic that it kind of just, I don't know, it just removes any implications of it being powerful at this point, you know. And like Ichigo used it so much that it just, you know, it got boring. It got boring to see every time, even after the Fullbring arc, and it changed and looked a lot cooler for sure. But it's like it was the same old, you know. It's like until he got Horn of Salvation and the other the actual Zangetsu, then you know we get the true self of his blade, which is a lot cooler. And this one, again, I don't hate these. They're just I don't see them as used as much or see any purpose in them being used a lot. But Sakashima Yokoshima, which is a Shinji's Bankai, it's it's cool. It's interesting the way that it works. It should have been used a lot more, I think. And or if the way that it was used in the anime and the Blood War, I think they should have put a bit more enemies instead of like 6 dudes trying to kill each other, you know? So the way that it works is cool. The way that it looks is cool. It's just that the way that they showcased it in the anime itself didn't do it justice, you know, and it kind of just, you know, it's there. You know, he killed 6 people that made them kill each other, kind of deal. And it was disappointing. That's pretty much it. Good old list.
So we're moving on to question number 6. What is your thoughts on the spiritual aspects, the transformations within the series? You know, they have Hollows, Rancor, Resurrection, Vastolordes, Spiritual Pressure, Reishi. They have a lot of terms to break down and a lot of forms to give your thoughts on how they handle all these elements, even the supernatural and shonen form. And we will have Ronan go first.
If I had to say anything, spiritual pressure is also pretty cool. The transformations are really, really spectacular. You never see these like things coming out of the way. Oh, and by the way, side note, Ren, this is my last question. I'm gonna head out right now.
All right.
So if I had to say like transformations, I really do like the Vostolore Bankai Resurrection, which by the way, I kind of which is fun fact. Grinjo is called Pantera, Spanish for panther. Pretty sick. I really spiritual pressure. It's a really unique way out of like, you know, chakra, ki, nen, quartz. Like, it's really cool because there's a lot of variations you can use with spiritual pressure. Like you can use Ryoku, Reiatsu, Kido, or Bakuro. Yeah, it's pretty much that stuff. And Vastolores, like let's be real here. Vastolores are terrifying. They're amazing. They're terrifying. Hell, Ichigo almost broke the gates of hell. Literally, almost blew up hell itself just to kill that one dude. Kokuto. Yeah, that's his name, Kokuto. And it's pretty. So I would say it's pretty unique, very useful, very destructive, don't you think? Because like I said, spiritual pressure can work in different ways. kind of like how ki, chakra, nen, haki, or anything like that can work like that. So yeah, that's my answer to that. And I'm going to head out right now. So I'll see you all later.
All right, see you, man. I will go next. So as with all your shonen anime, you need your power set explained. It doesn't really matter what it is. You just kind of need it. It's equivalent to Dragon Ball, Ki, Naruto with chakra, or Yu Yu Hakusho with spirit, energy, etc. You kind of need your power-ups and the scaling and what they're going to be and how they will be explained. And it's no different with Bleach. I really like the supernatural element behind this franchise. The fact that Reishi is like spirit particles and it could be absorbed by people in certain places. I think the Quincy's are the ones that absorb them like a lot with the environment. So I think that's also pretty good. Spiritual pressure, obviously how much spirit energy you are exerting, and people can like sort of sense your presence, and sometimes you can mask it. You could do like a soul nido if you're fast enough and it will disappear like Ichigo does in Thousand Year Blood War. It's always about the various use of that power and what you get out of it. And I think Bleach has like, there are times where they do like a huge exposition dump. I think by Soul Society and a wrong car, that's when they start really pouring out these terms, but at least they had the decency to like really explain it before they just dump like all this information on you. So I do appreciate that. But still, also Vasto Lordes is also cool. I think the transformations are, I kind of wish it was a little bit more of them. Granted, what we got was still also pretty cool, because they said, hey, these Vasto Lordes are like super rare in terms of like, you know, how they are handled. You better watch out. They are the highest level of a Rancor out there in general, which is pretty scary when you think about it. So I really loved it. I enjoyed it, and it really shows how either you're on a certain level or you're not. You're low level, mid level, or high level, and you could probably work your way up depending on the situation. Next up is Mr. Sanjin. What do you think about all these aspects of spiritual pressure transformations within Bleach?
I mean, like that's been the most fascinating and interesting part to me, is just like the structure of like the worlds, as you mentioned, all these terms were just like there's all these classes and ranks of Soul Reapers and Hollows and everything based on that. And then the power systems as well being extremely complex. With Soul Reapers and their Zanpakuto, we see, like, especially, say, for example, in the Soul Society arc, we got to see a lot of lieutenants and their Shikais while they were fighting each other, and just like the knowledge that, like, a Shikai is almost like a teaser for, like, what their Bankai could potentially be later on down the road. It's just like, oh, I wonder how they're related and things like that. I do like how, despite how there's like quite a lot of terms and quite a lot of power systems to keep track of. But for most of the series, at least, through Fake Karakura Town, the biggest driving force or the biggest conflict was between Soul Reapers and Hollows. And it was a big deal toward the end of it with what Aizen was trying to do, because he was trying to blur that line between them. And so you've got Soul Reapers becoming Hollows and Hollows becoming Soul Reapers, essentially, and it's, I don't know, it's sort of understandable and just sort of like grounding it and just like this is the problem, or this is why it's taboo, or like why it's a big deal. But yeah, just there's so many power systems and there's so many different terms. I don't know how Kubo keeps track of them all, to be honest. So, and as we kind of touched on it back with the discussion about like keto and things like that, where there's so many that inevitably some abilities and things get buried. So like keto is underutilized, like Hakuda is as well. I recall like there's this, they make this great big deal about in the Soul Society arc when Ichigo is first fighting Kenpachi Zaraki. He makes this big explanation about these sort of barriers that you have to break through with like your spiritual pressure in order to even cut people. And that just, I feel like little things like that have just gotten so lost at the point that we're in. Additionally, as we get further into like Thousand Year Blood War, I feel like the power creep has gotten incredibly bad. Like the Quincy's are just like so different from what I came to expect. I know we had like a limited sample size with like Uryu and his family, but they just have like ridiculous powers that, at least to me, don't follow as much of a clear structure as every other faction has. It's just, you look around as like, oh, this one controls, like they control these really metaphysical things, but like it's one, I control the like fear itself, I control love itself, and then this other guy is like, I can just imagine like everything I want and it'll happen. Like I can just imagine that everyone's bones are cookies and then no one can fight me. And it's just like, dear God, what are we doing? And just like but also on the other side of that token, I feel like we're also getting, I don't know if like the anime just did a terrible job or like just really condensed the training arc, but I feel like there's been drastic jumps of power in such a ridiculously short amount of time. And just like a lot of it has been really muddy, I feel like, and just like as we mentioned, like Renji getting a second Bankai because it's just like, oh, your sword actually lied about what its name is, or something like that. There's like a lot of that kind of thing going on, and I feel like it would have just been a lot cleaner if they had just like found a way to do like a third release for their sword after Bankai, and then I feel like it would be a lot more understandable, and we could just it would just make a lot more sense almost, I feel like. And just like on the Quincy side, I was more expecting them to have a power system more like the Espada or more like Soul Reapers, where like instead of a sword, but which they're all using swords when they're Quincy's, I don't know, but just like, here's my bow or my gun or whatever, and it has like 2 release forms or something like that that do something else. Maybe the arrows split in midair or something like that, you know? I was expecting it to be more of that dynamic of like sword fighting versus bow and arrow, basically. Just like I wanted a whole bunch of, if you've ever played like the original games like Shattered Blade on the Wii, where it's just like a bunch of Soul Reapers, and then like Uryu is there with the one long range fighter, and so like anyone who picks them is just such an ass to go against. And like I don't know, I was just expecting it to be a lot more like that, and it just kind of floored me. And just at this point, it's just very, very complicated. But it's just, I'm sure wherever Kubo is or whatever they're doing right now, it makes sense in their head, at least.
Rocker, what about you? What do you feel about all these spiritual pressure aspects and transformations within the Bleach franchise?
Okay. 2 things I want to say quickly. With regarding Renji's Bankai, is like first one, Hihio Zabimaru. Technically, that's an incomplete Bankai, because when he goes to meet with Ichibe, he learns that Zabimaru's true name is Soo Zabimaru, and then he gets his full Bankai. And the one guy that he was fighting against was Mask the Masculine. As you put it, Ren, the luchador guy.
Yeah, his name was like on the top of my head, but the only thing I remember is the mask and the little midget guy that was near him that was giving him like power ups
Cheering
all the
him
time.
on.
Yeah, James.
That was funny as shit.
It truly was.
But-
I like that moment.
Yeah, but then he got fucking bodied by Renji.
Yo.
But I'm gonna more lean onto the transformation side of this question. For this, I'm gonna try to use a couple examples from the Espada and everything, which were the 10 swords that Aizen, the ten swords which Aizen had underneath them. Because at first they look relatively humanoid, but then when they really do their resurrection or whatever you want to call it, they go from relatively normal to what the fuck. With Yami, he goes from just like a muscle bound guy to a really big fuck off muscle bound guy and everything. And yeah, it changes your perception of them. You think, oh, look at them, they're so tiny, but in the lore, basically all of the Spada are Vastolordes, which is the highest class of Hollow, and it is said that in Hueco Mundo, the amount of Vastolordes can be counted on your hands, which just shows you how rare they can be. And also with the power on the Vastolordes, if you were to get a full 10, that could potentially doom the Soul Society and everything. Blah, 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 blah. And that's really, I'm sorry for my relative shortness on this one, but I didn't really research much onto that one because to me the spiritual aspects and all that really didn't catch my attention. In Bleach, I was more in it for the story, the fights, and all the relationships. So, Ren, please don't beat me for this one.
No, you're fine. I can totally understand that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of homework to keep up with, I would say, which is why I said in the discussion chat, by the time you get to 1,000-Year Blood War, if you have not seen like 3 arcs before this, get ready to be lost, because I can already imagine that with some people. But hey, it's the last arc, so I can kind of see that. But
though technically it's not the last arc, because we don't know whether or not Hell Arc's going to get a full-on animation and everything, even though it is a one-shot at the end.
I hope
Kubo
people just don't rush, but that's a question for later.
To summarize it up better, let Kubo cook.
Yes, please let this man cook. Shug, it is your turn. What do you think of all the transformations and the spiritual aspects of Bleach?
My shit was muted. Anyways, because here's the thing, right? Whenever Bleach was starting off, and you have like, I think it was up until the end of the Arankar arc, where power scaling was okay. It wasn't too bad. It was fairly set in stone with how powerful some of these people were, and you could scale them on your own fairly simply. And I would say with the Arankars themselves, it really depended, because you had a lot of them. You had, what was it, 0 to 10, and some of them were just like, oh, I'm more powerful than a captain. They get bodied by a lieutenant, and or they just get one-shotted by a captain itself. So it was just weird to see how they kind of just not really abandoned it, but it phased out slowly in terms of how you would power scale them yourself, because like I said, you had where let's say Ulquiorra was number 6 if I'm not mistaken, and he was like, hey, or 4, I think it was 4, and he goes like, oh, I'm this powerful entity, that I'm a Bastolorde, I'm even powerful than all the rest of these guys. And it's like, then why the hell are you number 4 kind of deal, So like it really not became confusing, but it was just kind of weird how they were scaled themselves. Especially, you had Baragon, which was number 2 somehow, and then you had Stark, who was number 1. And it's like you would think that Baragon would be number 1, or so, just because 1, he's the king of Hueco Mondo, and 2, anything he touches dies, kind of deal. Like his power is very overpowered. So, it really just, I don't know, it got chaotic at some points in those Soul Reaper arc and the Aranka arc. It got chaotic, and then we get to the Blood War, and once we get to the Blood War, it kind of just, I don't know, because you have these Stern Ritters who have all this power. They're very powerful themselves, but some are just weak as hell, you know, or they're powerful, and they're powerful or whatever. But when they fight a specific character, they just get blown out of proportion or just completely destroyed. There's some that got just completely mangled by people like Byakuya when they randomly popped back up. So it really just. I don't know. It got very not confusing. I just don't really know what happened with the specific power scaling with how they did it. And I don't know. I think they just kind of, got rid of all of it. Said, "Fuck it, we're not gonna focus too much into how it all works, and we're just gonna have fun with it." It basically became to where it's main character is powerful as hell, main villain is powerful as hell, and they get to kill each other, kind of deal. And then of course, you have the scaling that they had, which was like the A through Z kind of deal. But even then, some of them were more powerful than the others were powerful than that, and yada yada yada. So again, it just got very just jumbled up in everything, and just the way they all used it. So I don't know. I think that's pretty much what I had to say. It's just that I got very just I don't know, we got cluttered. I would say with how many characters and all that stuff got introduced into Blood War, and how many differences and changes happened.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's a lot of homework, and also just it's certain points where it feels like the power scaling just does not matter. It all depends on, which is the coolest character on screen at the time, and him winning. Stern Ritter is just getting blown away to smithereens. Yeah, I definitely could see that, but we're moving on to number 7, which is citing which villain is the best between Aizen and Yuhabok. Which one do you prefer the most, and cite your reasoning? And I'm going to start with Sanjin first.
I gotta go with my man Aizen. It may or may not be because I just like the arcs he's a part of infinitely more than Thousand Year Blood War right now. But a couple of things with Aizen is that he was proven to have orchestrated basically everything that had been going on up to the end of Fate Karakura Town when he got bodied, but perhaps even some things after it with like being in prison and then probably later released. But we kind of got to see the plan as it was carried out. There were some arcs like Turn Back the Pendulum, the past arc, that kind of touched on that, like went into the past and touched on that as well, and just like had the things as it was happening. And then Soul Society arc, he gave us the whole like first really interesting stuff that was going on with the whole murder conspiracy turning into not a murder at all, and he was just trying to get the Hogyoku and all that. I think above all, the biggest thing is that we kind of understood why he was OP to everyone, and why it had to be Ichigo that fights him at the end. Because essentially he demonstrated that he basically fooled everybody in the Soul Society into them having a certain idea of what his Zanpakuto release was, and we kind of touched on it in that conversation earlier. And so he kind of just heist movied everybody. We're just like, actually, it does this, and so now you're all under my spell forever. And so just like with that knowledge, we know it's just like, oh, what's happening like isn't really happening, and so like every person who's seen that fake release is under the spell, and so none of them can really fight him properly. It has to be Ichigo because he wasn't there for any of that. The one exception to that, of course, is like the final fight between Ichigo and Aizen, where the evolution in him of the Hogyoku is just getting ridiculous, and he's just like completely changing powers like every few minutes. But up until that point, it was all very understandable and orchestrated, and he's like 99.9% of the time just extremely calm and collective and just cold and calculating, and he's just really cool, and he definitely takes the top spot for me.
Rocker, what about you? Aizen or Yuhabak? Which one do you prefer as a villain?
Well, I like Aizen and his motivations, but I'm gonna have to go with disagree with the guy who just previously went. Sorry if I've already forgotten your name. I am so sorry, but I got to go with Yuhawak because the guy, he is relatively simple. He knows what he wants, and I mean, he obviously. Wait, I'm not gonna say that part, but he knows what he wants, and if you look at when he first reveals him, like the first Wandenreich invasion, they basically abso-fucking-lutely body everybody. He kills Yamamoto, and they just ultimately wreck shit. And the way he goes about it, I just like, because he just wants to create a world for him and he basically wants to kill the Soul King and basically replace him as the god of this world. It's simple. I mean, don't get me wrong, Aizen has his redeeming qualities, but the man is like a fucking maze, up, down, left, right. You never know what he's going to be doing because his enemies are playing checkers while he's playing chess, basically. And while the main reason why I like Ewok is his ability, the Almighty, allows him to what's the word I'm looking for here? Alter the future. He sees an attack coming at him that could potentially hurt him. Bloop. He can alter it to where it basically doesn't hit him and everything.
Shug, what about you? What do you think of Aizen and Yuhabak? Which one do you prefer as a villain?
So I see it as this. The time that we spend with both characters, Aizen and Yuhabaha, is very different. You know, with Aizen, we get him from the second arc until pretty much the end, if you really want to say. And he was like a constant threat at all times, a constant presence that they had to deal with at times. And he was always a character that, again, he's very calm, very calculated, very he basically, you know, he wrote the manga or the anime, he wrote the script. And so whenever we get to a point where he's, let's say, in the front lines, he's there. You know, he's a powerful presence. Everybody is very attentive to him, even compared to Yama. And Yamamoto was just, you know, he knew what was going to happen, and he kind of got cocky with it, you know. So it was interesting to see how I guess evil, you know, and how threatening it was to just have Aizen in the battlefield itself, and you know, and even against all 13 captains, basically, they all failed. If we're really honest here, they all kind of failed until Ichigo came and got, you know, basically beat his ass to a point where Kisuke had to seal him. Like he even, I would say he didn't even lose. In all honesty, he just got fought to a draw, and you don't really see that with Yuha. With Yuha, it's like he pops in. He's like, yeah, I'm the king of the Quincy's kind of deal. I'm here to, get rid of all y'all, and I want to kill the Soul King so I can replace it. And it's like, okay. And then he appears, doesn't really fight Yamamoto, but kind of does, copy and all that. And he tries to recruit Aizen to the cause. And it's like, Aizen doesn't really follow his cause because his cause was, I guess, somewhat similar, but not really similar at the same time. Kind of deal. It just depends on how you really see it. And then he has a little scrap with Ichigo, and then he disappears. He just disappears for most of it, and he just sends his underlings. And it's like, yeah, we know that he's there, kind of deal, but he just doesn't pop up as much. You would expect him to pop in and be, a looming presence above everybody else. But it's like, I'm just sitting in a throne in a different world, basically, or in a different, space and or plane of existence as everybody else is killing themselves. And it's like, it's not up until almost the end of the entire thing where he actually starts, popping off and actually fighting whenever he fights Ichibe. And whenever he fights Ichibe, it's like, it's just like, hey, I predicted this shit. I changed my future. I don't die, but you get fucking blown to bits. I win. And it's like, oh, okay. So, a lot of it just had to do with just the fact that they made him so overpowered just cause. It's like, I don't know, that's how it felt. I don't hate him. I mean, both villains were pretty fucking cool, I would say, but he was just there to be there, and it's like, I think the anime is doing a bit more justice to the character itself compared to the manga, because the manga literally just threw him in. He appeared, fought Ichigo in like half a panel or whatever, disappeared, came back, killed Ichibe, disappeared for it's like, it was a lot of just popping in and out. And it's like now in the anime where he's actually doing something here and there, but it's pretty much all the same. But at least he actually fought Ichigo for like a good 30 seconds instead of just have a panel where he just grabbed them and threw them. So I think the anime is helping the character a little bit more, but I still prefer Aizen because you get to spend a lot of time with him compared to Yuha Bahan, and it's just like, I don't know, you grow attached to Aizen because you get to, again, see him more, understand him more, and not really understand him because he's still an evil son of a bitch, but like understand his whole reasoning as to why he's evil, kind of deal. And it's like, he just wants to kill the Soul King because he fucking hates the Soul King, and that's it. So it's just, I don't know. It's like, the two villains are great. I just think that Aizen is a lot better character than Yuha, mainly because of how much time we spent with him compared to the other.
All right, I guess I'll go on this one. So I pretty much agree with what everyone is saying. I think that the main thing here is that, I want to add something to it. I think it hits harder with Aizen because at first he's one of the Soul Society captains. You will figure he's on their side, and then he betrays them, betrays everyone, and then it's sort of a shocking reveal. It's one of the things where I think that crowning moment where Aizen stabs like Momo, he's like, everything's gonna be alright, boom, stab. That's just like the pinnacle of betrayal and evil, and it really shows. For differing reasons, I like them. I think they try to make Yuhabak this tyrannical figure that is just so fucking broken. It's insanity when you find out what the Almighty just does. And that whole fight, especially like the remainder of it with Ichibe, is absolutely just stupid insane. But it's one of those things where you have more time with Aizen as a character. You have more time with Aizen as a character. You have more time to sort of see what he's doing with his experiments, and how he wants to also show up Uehara, because you know they're both scientists and he's the one who took the Hokyoku for himself. So it's one of those things where he has like multiple sort of connections with the characters, and that's one effective way to have a villain, is when he's mostly connected to the main cast of characters you care about, and they try to stop him, and they all have like differing intentions, motivations, and he has his own thing he wants to do. Whereas Yuha, I feel like he's mainly just the big foil for not only Soul Society, and it kind of, you know, makes sense because they killed all the Quincy's, but it's also him and Ichigo in the past they have together. Is like he's the one that's the Quincy king, and Ichigo has Quincy powers. And as I said before, I do like that aspect of where, you know, he does the Ashwallen and he is responsible for Ichigo and his mom dying, you know. But it's also a thing of, I guess they could have fleshed it out just a lot more. I also agree the anime is doing a little bit of a job to say, oh, what is he doing with his subordinates? Well, he's killing them the fuck off. Okay. What is he doing here or there? Whereas the manga's just like, here I am, and now I'm gone. And it's just the same thing over and over again. So I think Aizen was just better planned, and I kind of prefer those villains just who have always been behind the scenes initially, who probably were good, who had a backstory, and then before they twist a knife, it's like, yeah, my plan is beautiful, it worked well, it's written well, and this is what is going on. And I think that's one of the crowning moments to why, you know, the Soul Society arc ended the way it did, in a high note. But I'm gonna move on to the next question, which is question number 8. So Bleach has this common criticism where it's like, oh, nobody really dies, people just get chopped in the chest. And how do you feel about this until it was like all the way up until the Quincy Blood War, where they started like killing off characters, and some people were complaining about that. Also, they were gonna kill off Bakuya, and I didn't know this, but apparently the manga said he died, but they decided to bring him back because Kubo got hate mail. So I want to know, what does everyone think about that? And I'll go with Sanjin first.
So this isn't really a big deal for me personally. The whole no one dying thing. Especially in arcs where like if you're watching the series or reading it for the first time, it always feels like that's a threat. And never really feels like an impossibility. Especially in arcs like Fake Karakura Town, where you didn't know what was going to happen. Like even the head captain might die. Like it was kind of crazy. Sort of as like a half a joke though, it is kind of always weird of like talking about like these characters that are soul reapers dying anyway, since they're like already in a form of afterlife. But it's an interesting thing. And I actually hadn't heard about the manga situation where Byakuya was actually supposed to be dead. But that's interesting. I wonder, like, well, I think I know where the point was. But he's had a little bit more of a presence in the anime, and I think ultimately the anime is probably making changes for the better in general. As hard as I'm finding a lot of it to swallow, that does seem to be the consensus, that like every change the anime is making is for like the greater good.
I'll give my thoughts on this. Now, I do agree. There are moments in Bleach where I kind of have to come clean. It's people who get like sliced in the chest maybe multiple times or stabbed a lot, and they're still kicking. That kind of happened a lot in like not only Soul Society, but you know, mostly the 3 arcs like above that. It sort of just happened. Where some people would get like stabbed to oblivion, and then next scene they might be okay, or conveniently there might be a healer around. I know, especially when Orihime started learning her powers in a Rancor arc, people are getting healed left and right from fatal wounds. It's like there's like 2 counts I remember where Ichigo just sort of should have kicked the bucket, but clearly he didn't because he got healed, or he may just spark something in him and he got back up. It's like, oh, I'm fine now, even though there's a giant hole in my chest where my heart should be. It's okay because I'm a hollow. That being said, I don't have a problem when they do kill off characters. They killed a few of them off in the original. As far as that goes, I mean, they killed off Gin, but I pretty much knew he was gonna die. They killed off a couple of other characters, like as they were going into the fake Kura Town arc. But Thousand Year Blood War just raises this to like 11. It's like Sanjin said in the chat before this. It's kind of like Japanese Red Wedding almost, and it's like 35 characters get killed, and I mean it's war, so it's kind of like symbolic with what they're going for. So I get that characters are gonna die in war arcs. It's just par for the course. You can't say if they are done well or stupidly, which it's a couple of other animes that do war arcs, and some of the way people die in there is just absolutely ridiculous, and this is kind of no exception sometimes. But do I think that Bakuya should have died where he was against Asnod? Yeah, because I feel like this. I think the best thing for that character to die there would have helped, because it sort of is a reverse on how he was so far. Remember, Bakuya was like cocky, prideful, you know what I mean, very quiet but very confident in his abilities. And when he was losing against Asnod and he was showing him the fear of, oh, Rukia, you know, I'm gonna go after her next, or she's gonna die, or whatever, this is your worst fear, I'm tapping into that. That conversation he had with Ichigo made him vulnerable. It made him open to, you know, being sad and relying on the one guy he told, hey, we don't want you substitute Soul Reapers here. We can handle all this in the Ronkar arc. You're not needed. To where it's like, now I need your help. I need you to have the balance of the Soul Society on your shoulders, because I'm about to kick the bucket. So I have no one else, man. And he's crying. And it's a very emotional moment. I think if he would have died there, it would have not only made Ichigo a stronger character, but also Rukia, because literally later on in Thousand Year Blood War, she fights Asnod, and they go blow for blow, and that would have been, just putting a little bit of like vengeance in that would have been like fine for what it was. So yeah, I don't agree with fans trying to bully Kubo or whatever. This is kind of why I said in a later question, that's gonna happen. You know, let the man kind of cook and do what he wants, because I think that's the only way we're going to get that hell arc is, you know, he said it himself. I need time to wait and see if I'm going to adapt that properly. So yeah, I'm of the team of let him cook and let him make what he wants, and we will get treated in the process. So yeah, if he would have died there, that would have been symbolic to her character. The only thing is that I wonder if that was done differently, how would that Rukia Bankai scene be? Because if it wasn't for Bakuya, then she wouldn't have been able to like control herself, compose herself, and it was hurting her hand. So I'm wondering how they would have done that. Maybe it would have been like, oh, it's his soul or whatever telling her to stop. And that probably would have sufficed, to be honest. I think it's the same amount of emotional resonance there, honestly, if they did that. So I really wouldn't mind either way. But Rocker, how about you? What do you think of this question of characters not dying in Bleach till Thousand Year Blood War and Bakuya's death? Well, his reverse death.
All right. Sorry about that. I accidentally fell asleep for a moment.
Oh no, it's fine.
But for the not for killing major characters part, I'm all for it if it serves a purpose, furthering the story, like with down in this, like how Byakuya spared Kuchiki and kept Byakuya, how Kubo spared him when he clearly died in comparison to the anime. In the manga said he very clearly died. I think if he wanted to go with a different route with that, he could have used Byakuya's death to push Rukia, who is Byakuya's adopted sister, to become stronger, allowing her to master her Bankai Haka no Togame and everything. Like I said, if the death of a character serves a purpose, I'm all for it. Like with the death of Yamamoto, that basically galvanized the Soul Society. I mean, they obviously wanted to defeat the Wandenreich and everything, but with Yamamoto's death, that just galvanized them even more to be like, yo, we got to end this fast, because if we don't, everything we know, everything we love as we know it, is going away. And for the excuse me, for the fans that sent Kubo hate mail, like you had said, let the man cook. If you want quality entertainment and everything that this man is putting out, you need to give him time, you know? And as for the people that actually, if they actually sent him hate mail, they need to go to the wood chipper. Man, that's really all I got on that one. If the death serves a purpose, I'm all for it. But if it's just but if it's just wanton killing off of characters, then yeah, no.
Shug, what about you? What do you feel about this question in terms of Kubo getting hate mail for death and characters not dying within Bleach?
Well, I was there 1,000 years ago when he was writing this manga and this chapter, because I remember reading the chapter itself when it came out, and I was hurt. I will admit, I was hurt. I didn't like Byakuya like that, but I was hurt. And I was like, fuck, you're killing this dude that was probably like the main villain of the Soul Society arc. He was practically the main villain of the second arc. And from then on, you see him as an ally, and he grows as a character, and he changes, and you see him that he's still a cold-hearted son of a bitch, but he's still nice on the inside. And whenever they killed him off, I remember it was, I think even the manga itself took like a 2-week break or something, because I saw a lot of things that people were just losing their minds at the fact that Byakuya got killed, and people were not liking that. And I was like, like I said, it hurt, it affected me, it made me sad, and I was like, okay, if he needed to die for the sole purpose of Ichigo having to ascend in power in terms of anger and how he had to approach this next battle, it's okay. So, like, the fact that they revived him at the same time, it's like, it doesn't bother me at all, because again, it's a beloved character. Like, I would say this is like Byakuya is on the level, like on par as like Neji dying in Shibuya. It's like, it's that kind of type of character that everybody loves and didn't want to see die. But compared to Kishimoto and Kubo, well, Kishimoto didn't give a fuck, and Kubo basically got bullied. And I think Kubo just got bullied the entire time, this whole arc. And I will always blame Shonen Jump for this, because this whole arc got really just, when it was coming out originally. It's not a great arc if you really read it compared to the anime itself. It's a bit more fleshed out. But the fact that he got threatened because he killed Byakuya, and I think that whole point of him killing Byakuya and getting hate mail for it was probably what stopped him from killing more. And I think that way is why he figured out a way to kill them, but they were brought back as zombies. because Toshiro full blown fucking died. Rose died and Kensei died. All three of those motherfuckers died. And you can't tell me otherwise. They fucking died. And they get brought back as zombies out of nowhere, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they're zombies." And then fucking Mayuri goes like, "Yeah, I can just change them," you know. And you see it as that you had what's her face, whatever the zombie bitch is, Giselle. And Giselle was like, "Yeah, I can turn them, anybody that isn't a Quincy into zombies, as long as they're dead or whatever, or they touch my blood." And it's basically that you see that these characters got killed, but then brought back because I think Kubo just got scared that people were just gonna hate because they killed them, and I do blame the fans in terms and Shonen Jump, but I blame the fans the most on this part of the fact that they, turn them into zombies and they're like, okay, they're alive now, but they ended up, killing off Ukitake, then Yamamoto, fucking Unohana, and what other captain died? I forget another captain that probably died. Oh, Chojiro, but Chojiro's not really a captain. But like you have all these characters die off in this arc, and then it's like these characters weren't really much beloved characters of the series, if we really want me to be honest, besides like Yamamoto maybe. But they kept them dead, and then they brought the other three back from zombies, and then Byakuya got revived by Squad Zero. So I think he tried to figure out a way to revive these characters without having to send them to Squad Zero every time. And the way that they explained it was that Byakuya was just so injured and so badly injured to the point of death that they just had to throw him in that lake and just to have him heal up, kind of deal. And that's the way they kind of just explain how he is still alive. So it sucks that it turned out that way, but either way, I think not killing them off would have been still, would have still been fine. It's just that I guess I don't know. He got pressured. I'm like 90% sure he got pressured because I can probably guess he had a different view of how he wanted to end Bleach, and then Shonen Jump had a different idea because they just wanted to rush him. So it sucks, but hopefully, again, we gotta let this man cook because we know just from the Soul Society arc that we know that he can make a good plot. He can make a good story. He can make some cool ass characters. And I think with the Hell arc, we have a chance to get introduced to a whole new thing, And I'm sure they did the movies, but the movies, are not canon. We all know this. They're not canon. None of that happened, basically. So I want to see how they introduce Hell again into the actual show itself or the manga itself. So it would be cool to see what they do with it. The concept of it is incredible, and I want to see how they could revive the old 13 captains in some way, because it has to do, with them probably being alive in Hell also, So, yeah, we'll see. Unless they just make it another movie and non-canon it like they always do in any manga or anime. They make it a movie and they're like, oh, it's non-canon, so don't worry about it. We're just gonna overpower a character and no purpose at all. So it just sucks how they do movies for anime. So yeah, it just I don't know. I want to see more. This leans into like the next couple questions. I want to see more Bleach, and I hope that the Blood War kind of helps Kubo. Gather that people still want Bleach. People want more, and I hope people have grown. And can enjoy a show without having to shit on him for doing something different that they don't like. That's pretty much it. Sorry.
Speaking of the Hell arc, this leads into the next question. So in these two questions, I kind of asked two things because I was made aware of this by someone in our group. But there's this side show called Burn the Witch, and it's supposedly tied in with Bleach. And I wanted to ask, has anyone seen it, on top of the fact that we are supposedly going to get an expansion of the Hell Arc, but Kubo said to like basically wait until he's like 100%, you know, no one's bothering him, whatever, before he actually, you know, gets deep into it with this one shot. Has anyone read it so far, and what do you think of it? And Shug, I'll go with you first.
Ooh, I'm going first. Yay. So Burn the Witch, I think it was like the first project that like Kubo did after Bleach, and it was years later, and I was like very excited because I was like, I love his art. His art is fucking amazing. I love the way that he does his characters. I love the way that he dresses them. I love the way that he just draws them in general. You know, so it was interesting to see that he decided to go somewhere different, basically, but still tie it into Bleach itself. And I love that because the way that they make it is that it's the Western branch, basically, is what they really call it. And it's interesting that it's just, you know, in England, and it has to do with wizards and mages and all this kind of, you know, kind of stuff, wizards, witches, magic, and all that, dragons, and you know, it's something different, something new. It's been a minute since I've seen any of Burn the Witch. You know, I only read it once, and it was really just a one shot. And I think they did like 3 or 4 episodes or something, and they spaced them out pretty far from each other. So like I barely remember itself from what they did of the one shot. But I would love to see more. I think not to not as a way to unite them fast in terms of like having them get together and whatnot, but like it'd be interesting to see if having the Hell Arc in some way connects Bleach to Burn the Witch in some way. Uh, I don't know. You know, again, we have to let this man cook. We got to, you know, let him put, you know, the baby and you know, just there and let it grow, kind of deal. We gotta, you know, let him plant the seeds and see how it all expands. Because Burn the Witch is an interesting universe that I want to see more of. And the characters themselves, again, we don't really get too much time with them, but they're interesting. They're all they're just cool, and it just looks like it's like if Harry Potter was an anime kind of deal, you know. So it'd be cool to see what he does with that universe itself, and I'd be very, very happy to see either or. You know, the Hell Arc it be continued, or Burn the Witch be continued and deeply explored. So you know, we'll see how that goes. I think he would probably do Hell Arc first instead of Burn the Witch because he doesn't really have to do too much in terms of storytelling and or not storytelling, but more of like power scaling and how it all is explained differently in that different branch of the world, basically. So yeah, I'm interested to see what it can be done. I want to see more, of course, and yeah, hopefully he gets the inspiration to get these works going, and we get to see more in the future.
All right, so as for what I think on this, so I have listened to like a podcast here or there about them describing the one shot, and Hell Arc is very interesting. I think the most interesting aspect to take away from it is the fact that there's not only deceased captains they're bringing back. I know they mentioned Yamamoto and how he has like this sort of new name, and they mentioned Unohana and how she has this like new title, but they also showed a dead Arrancar from the past that was in the non-canon movie. He's the guy with the pink hair, I forget his name, but they showed him in the actual arc and how he came back. And I remember just he had this weird, like, his arm was just completely like decimated, like it was gone. It was all black, and they also had these weird like death symbols all over their body, and their weapons were like different. So what I'm wondering off the top of my head is when these rifts, like when these hell rifts like start to open, what's gonna happen when we see like the older captains or all these other people and shit like that, and how their bodies are gonna be like mangled and all this other stuff. It's like very interesting in that aspect because it's something that we never really seen before, and you could tell their bodies are like all corrupted and personalities as well. That's the best part I think about it. They also talked about how the black butterflies you saw in the series had some connection to these rifts opening over time, which I thought was very interesting because I was like, these same butterflies, like I see them everywhere. Like, what is the purpose of them? As I was thinking about it, and I wasn't thinking about it at the time. I just thought, oh, maybe it's like some random, reishi or some soul or whatever trying to escape. Because I remember the introduction arc sort of introduced that like souls are floating around, even they can get in like animals, bugs, whatever. But no, it's apparently for the hell rifts, and I'm like, oh, okay, so something's going down there. And the last thing was Ichigo's son is like the key to opening these rifts, because as far as I know from this one shot, he is the only one that can kind of do it, which is why it's kind of dangerous, and how some of the captains led down there anyway. So I think, just let him cook. Do not bully Kubo into fucking writing this arc for the anime or anything like that. I'm just gonna wait and see what happens. As for Burn the Witch, I saw a little bit of it. It's decent, but it's different. It's sort of like what Shug said, where they're trying to do their own sort of reverse Bleach Harry Potter thing, and it's mostly like people being scared of dragons and like reverse London. They also said that there is a Soul Society branch, but it's the Western version. The one we know in Bleach is like Eastern, but this is West. So they deal with like either dragons or some other crazy sightings that goes on over there. And I thought it was cool. The one thing I kind of liked is that they have like, it's almost like a Hado, but they call it magic number whatever, like magic number 99. And then they do this like thing with a gun where they shoot something out, and it's kind of interesting. It's like, oh, they have magical counterattacks similar to Hado, but it's like in gun form. It's like the polar opposite, which I thought was like pretty cool, pretty unique. I dig the character so far. The villains, I feel like, because it's like only 3 episodes, it needs a little bit more fleshing out, but it's only a one shot, so I'm sure when they expand it, it's going to be fine. But so far, I'm just getting the idea and the impression that most of them are assholes, and they have this whole, oh, I want to be part of the Savers, which is, once again, it's kind of reminiscent to Soul Society, but these girls want to be part of it. And they feel like they are like just, hot shit, big in the world. They are the ones that are killing all the dragons and doing a good job at it. It's cool, and I want to see how it blends in, but I also want them to try to do different and unique things, which is a combination of both. So yeah, be, something of a tissue for Bleach, where it's like, yeah, we might be able to connect here or there. You might see a character here or there that doesn't even know about this world, but at the same time, keep it relatively close to the chest, do different things, and I think it'd be all right. Either way, I want to see how it goes down, and that's my opinion on that. So Sanjin, what about you? What do you think of these two things, Hell Arc or Burn the Witch?
I actually haven't gotten to these personally. For the longest time I did procrastinate reading on the manga a little too long, and now I'm just kind of experiencing things as they happen now. With Thousand Year Blood War, which is why my feelings toward it are a little heated right now. But the big thing for me is that for the longest time, like ever since the original Bleach anime ended, and just looking up little tidbits of information here and there, it was always kind of Bleach is going into its last arc. Oh, Thousand Year Blood War is the last arc. It's the final arc. Everything's going to end. And so mentally, I've always been in this mindset of like finally seeing the end, and now it's like there's more. And now it's kind of like wrapping my head around that is the big hurdle. But from what you guys just described about like Burn the Witch and the magic numbers, it sounds like maybe there's a possibility for like the Keto system to get like a new light and better representation in like a spin-off series. That sounds really cool if that is the case. The hell, from just like what I've been hearing so far, because like most of this is new to me, and I kind of knew the risk coming into a podcast like this. But what I've heard from the hell stuff as well, it does sound like they have things to work with, and it's always cool to like go somewhere else and explore another facet of the same world that we've maybe heard about and like haven't been able to see or explore all that much. And like, of course, the most important thing is just like the interest from the creator. Like, as long as Kubo wants to keep doing stuff, then let him keep doing stuff. I'm just concerned, I guess I would say, about like when a series goes on too long. Cough, a One Piece cough. But I mean, as long as the passion is there, it sounds like there's some interesting directions things could be taken in, and so I could be keen to explore that, and could be up for that.
Rocker, you still here?
Yes, I am. I've just been muted, waiting my turn.
What do you think of the Hell arc, and have you seen Burn the Witch?
I'll get to those in just a second. But to answer the one burning question, Ren, that you've been wanting to know, that guy, that former Espada Arankar, his name is Sayal Zaporo. He's the one who got fucking bodied by Mayuri.
Yeah, I remember the big baby thing just ate him like salad, and I was just like, okay, this is funny. No one else can take him, but Mayuri was like, you know what, Bankai, just eat this guy. And then there was the very weird scene where, like, I think it was Sheeta, he was getting smothered by the chick or whatever. I forget her name too. But I just know
Mamu?
that, yeah, Mamu. He was getting smothered by her, and that was it. So I was just like, you know, this guy is just here all of a sudden. I was like, what's the deal? Because he looks kind of different.
Yeah, but yeah, that's Sayal Zaporo. He is a prick. He's a scientist, but he's a prick. And I'll get more into that towards the end of this. But back to the original question: Burn the Witch and Hell Arc. I tried reading the Burn the Witch. I could not get into it. Just not my thing. I love Kubo and all the shit that he's given us in Bleach, but Burn the Witch, meh, if you know what I'm saying. But for the Hell Arc, oh dear God, do I have a raging love for that. I've read what we've got, the only two episodes, not the episodes, only the couple of chapters that are out, and oh dear God, it's gonna be beautiful when it gets released. If we get it full on animated and expanded on, because personally, there's been what I want to see is, if they do bring it back, I want to see them bring back the original Gote 13, because in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, Yuhabak basically said the original 13 are unhinged, bloodthirsty monsters, and I want Kubo to just expand on that, because goddamn, I'm as you can tell from a few things I said, I am really excited for this, because the fights are going to be insane, the interactions are going to be sane. We're going to get to see some of the old characters that have died. Yeah, I'm just excited for the potential, and like we've already been like we've all been saying throughout this, let Kubo fucking cook. Give him time. Let him take his time. We don't want a rushed piece of poo. We want a fucking masterpiece. We want to feast on this. And yeah, that's really all I got to say. And I was going to say the other word, that one word around that you said, but I figured you'd probably hit me if I did.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Just shit, it's fine. But I just have to mention, I am in agreement with you. I hope they do show the original 13 court guards, because this flashback, this was back when Yamamoto was a monster. Like, he didn't care. He was walking on the dead bodies of his own teammates just to get to Yuhaba. So I'm just kind of like, what I'm thinking in my mind is, if he's in hell are they gonna revert back to that original personality? And that's going to be fucking crazy if they expand on that. I want to see that wholeheartedly. But we're moving on to the next question, which is obviously fight scenes, best fight scenes within Bleach, and you can make any honorable mentions you want to. So, Rocker, I'm gonna start with you first.
Goddamn, got me on short notice here. Okay. Fight scenes. I've got actually a reasonable amount of these, but I'm gonna really limit it to 3. My first one is this one takes place during the Thousand Year Blood War arc. It's Kenpachi Zaraki versus Unohana. Because slight spoiler here, Unohana is the first Kenpachi and an original founding member of the Gote 13. And dear God, the fight they had, and this to set up the fight between Kenpachi and Unohana was to help Kenpachi get stronger and basically unlock more power. And she goes because if you look into the lore between Kenpachi, the fight between Kenpachi and Unohana, when they first met, Kenpachi was the only person who gave Unohana a scar, which happened to be, to put it bluntly, right between her titties, right in the middle area. And when he did that, he was like, well, fuck, if I keep fighting at this level of strength, I'm not going to get to enjoy my fights and everything. So he unconsciously put a mental block on his powers. So basically, they fight and everything in the Muken or whatever. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Basically they fight and everything. Then Unohana activates her Bankai Minazuki, and you think, it's just going to be an even more awesome form of that giant flying manta ray, which looks just so absolutely adorable. No, it literally everything turns blood red. Her Zanpakuto toe just gets from the hilt up, just gets coated in a dripping red viscous fluid that's basically a insanely powerful acid that's capable of melting everything. And if you watch the fight, which you can actually watch because I do believe it is in Core 2, it's awesome. Kenpachi gets all turned all skeletal and everything. Same with Unohana. And we learned that Unohana actually learned the healing arts and everything from Korinji from the Squad Zero to also help prolong her fights and everything. So, because she enjoyed fighting. But after I don't know exactly when she went all peaceful and everything, she decided to put her healing arts to good use, healing everybody. Yeah, that's like my personal favorite fight in all of Bleach, but my second favorite fight would have to be who was it? I'm going with another Kenpachi fight. Kenpachi versus Noitora Gilga, one of the Espadas and everything. He's the one where when he released his Resurrection, he basically sprouted multiple arms that each had like a scythe and everything, and it just gave Kenpachi even more time to show off his power, his skill, his more not really his skills because he's a one-trick pony. It's slash, fight. No use of thank you, Bastion. That's a very apt picture there. But he has really no skill in Keto, spell, really hand-to-hand combat outside of really just grabbing somebody and just smacking them into a wall or throwing them. It basically just shows he's a straight-on physical attacking monster with his Zanpakuto toe. And friggin' Noitora there is just all, haha, you can't cut me. Zanpakuto's like, haha, yeah, bitch. Chop. And he cuts him. And really, I just like that fight because it just shows when Kenpachi's faced with a strong opponent, he can push himself to higher and higher and higher levels. And as for the final fight for my top 3, I would have to go with Ichibe versus Yuhawak because it displays the power of the leader of Squad Zero. The guy is pretty fucking broken because he basically controls names. I think we touched on this a little bit earlier on in the cast. His Zanpakuto Ichimonji can overwrite names and everything. So, like, and a perfect example would be when he was fighting against Yuhawak. Basically, he threw all that black ink on him and wrote Black Ant, which gave him the power of a black ant. And also, when he had the power of his arms, severely cut the power of his sword and everything. But yeah, it's just, excuse me. And also with the random ass arms and everything, they come out of nowhere and be like, you're going to go 1,000 kilometers away to reflect on your dumbassery. And really, that's my favorite three fights right now. As the 1,000-Year Blood War goes on, it may change, and if we get more in the Hell Arc, if we get into the Hell Arc fights from there, it may change even more. But yeah, that's really all I've got to say on that one, and that's it.
All right, Sanjin, it is your turn. Favorite fights in the Bleach series?
So I feel like there are some answers that are like objectively right. Most of them involving Ichigo. Ichigo versus Byakuya at the end of Soul Society arc definitely delivered. His fights versus Grimmjow and Ulquiorra in Hueco Mondo were fantastic. The Ulquiorra fight especially just has like such a cool vibe to it as they're in the nighttime portion of Hueco Mundo up at the top, and just almost like Nightmare Before Christmas vibes or something, for lack of a better term for that. But and also like Ichigo versus Aizen, and then more recently in 1,000-Year Blood War, Yamamoto versus, I'm not going to say the name, I hate the name, but Quincy Leader, who didn't actually end up being Quincy Leader. There are some fights that get like less talked about, not as much, or lesser talked about. There's something about like how like the fight with Lord Baragon that I thought was interesting in Fate Karakura Town Arc, how they basically defeated him with a part of himself or like the same power. And there was some Keto representation in there, along with the reveal of Soifon's Bankai, of course. In that same arc, I really like the emotion. Not necessarily because the fight itself was really cool or had really cool choreography or anything, but like I really like the emotion in the fight of like Sajin versus Kaname Tosen, and how that finally culminated in there. How the holification in Tosen allowed him to finally see, and he could finally see Sajin, and just like, unfortunately, like talk down about his appearance and stuff. And then like how the holification also like turned him into a bug, and then with Sajin's Bankai out, it was basically like he was trying to swat a fly. And just like the symbolism and everything, like when he just called someone, he just said, I like when he was defeating Shonen Pao earlier in that arc, he like Sajin literally referred to himself as like an insignificant bug, and then it kind of like even though like Tosin was the bug, he was like Sajin was losing the fight. And so like all the symbolism connected to that. In my quote unquote research, I did decide to like watch a few like online rankings and stuff in case I was like missing anything, and I was surprised that some fights from some of the filler arcs were actually making it in, because one of my favorites, even though it isn't even canon, there's this really short, it's probably the shortest fight I can list here, but it's there's a fight between Sajin and the Re-Guy or the clone version of Soy Phone in the I believe it's the Gote invasion arc, or like the fake Shinigami arc, where they fight in like this bamboo field like outside the walls of the Seirete. There's a lot of like Hakuda, a lot of hand to hand, and like even Sajin's getting in on it, and it's really cool. And then you get to see the ghost forms of Tenkin try to do some cool moves. Like he tries to do a sweep with it, like right above his head to get Soy Phone off of him. He like stabs the sword like down into the ground, causes a quake to like disrupt her and stuff. And then at the end, we get this great big clash between the Kokujo Tengen Myo, the giant sword coming down, versus Soy Phone's Jakuho Raikoben missile. And it's just really, really cool. And then also in the culmination, the last one I'm going to mention, the culmination of that arc is the fight of Ichigo and a few others versus Kage Rosa, the main antagonist of that arc. There's a lot of good coordination between some of the others that showed up there. I believe it was Chad, Rukia, Renji, and maybe Oryu was there. Correct me if I'm wrong. But some good team coordination with them. And then when Ichigo finally gets powered up, he does some really brutal looking Getsuga Tenshos on him. And then like toward the end, where like the fight is almost over, Kage Rosa like charges him, and Ichigo like shatters his sword, but there's this like really visceral and clean animation where Kage Rosa in like desperation just like grabs like one of the shards left of his blade in midair and like still rushes him, and then Ichigo does this like final slash into him, and just like they really emphasize how the sword like digs into the body and stuff and just cuts him. And just, man, like we can talk about it in a bit with like the filler arcs and stuff, but it like the situations with like the filler arcs and like how that's set up, it allows for some pretty unusual fights that we normally wouldn't get, and just kind of creates a scenario where it's like, well, we kind of really want to see this, why don't we just do it and animate it really well? And that's just kind of what happens in that Gote invasion arc.
I'm gonna go real quick. It's not gonna be like too extensive, but I really like the final battle with Ichigo and Aizen, where, I mean, if you talk about seeing power, pure power just within blows, then it's a really damn good fight where they're trying to kill each other, and then the swords are clashing, and you see like everything within vicinity getting like destroyed and obliterated. It's one of those fights where it's like, it's just so cool. And you see just Aizen get desperate. Obviously the Hyokoku is really just warping his personality and perception and making him like angry, so he turns into this like crazy hollow form, advanced hollow Shinigami thing with the butterfly, and then he turns into like another one where all the blood starts dripping from this rock, and it's really fucking insane. This fight probably has like some of the better implemented transformations, and that's like saying a lot. But another fight that had those, I would say, is Ukihara versus Ichigo, the final battle, because him fighting Vasto Lorde, yeah, it was a stomp, but it was one of the more entertaining stomps I think I've seen in the franchise, with him just sort of stomping on Ukihara's face, literally, and him about to do the Sero and blast him away, and Ukihara's like, well, I lost, kill me anyway. And then they're trying to stop him from going crazy because Ichigo lost control of the hollow at this rate. They're trying to stop him. He stabs Uryu, and it just goes absolutely insane. I think another one I also liked is Ichigo versus Grimjo. The final battle was also pretty good, where he uses like Resurrection, and he starts wailing on this guy like super hard. All the animations, the flip kicks that we talked about in chat was one of the fascinating things about that battle, really. And it sort of shows out. This is when the animation, it gets really damn good. And there's that last shot where he sort of like, well, Grimjo, I can't lose to you, after he's listening to it, or he may have to stop you. And then he cuts him once, and then it just freeze frames, and it's just so damn good with the blood everywhere. It's a damn good fight. Also, as one more honorable mention, I probably forgot about this, but another fight that I really enjoyed was Yamamoto versus Yuhabak. It's insane in the anime with how well coordinated and well developed this fight was, from the raging inferno that Yamamoto unleashes on Yuhabak and the Soul Society, and everything's engulfed in flames. This is truly like an amazing centerpiece within the anime. If you haven't watched Thousand Year Blood War, watch it for this fight that happens in Core 1. I'm telling you, it's so fucking incredible. It's like the animation team just came in, gave it their all. Number one, A tier good stuff at Studio Pierrot. I cannot recommend it enough. They captured this beautiful high velocity fights, showing the true power of the Zaka no Dachi. And oh man, I could fall in love with this fight for days. However, I have to move on. Shug, how do you feel about this? What is your favorite fights throughout the entirety of Bleach?
My favorite fight, at least number one, will be the one that got me introduced to the show. That's it. Like, the second fight with Renji and Ichigo will always be probably one of my favorites, I would say. Like, I love the one where Ichigo fights Kenpachi, but I think, again, I got introduced with the fight of Renji versus Ichigo, and I think to this day I like that fight no matter what. I think that fight is probably one of the more probably one of Renji's best fights in the entirety of the show, if we want me to be really honest with you. I think Renji's best fight was against Ichigo, and there was a lot of emotions from both sides in both characters, and it's like this kind of thing where it shows you that Renji was never really evil. He was just following orders, kind of deal, and it's like it opened his eyes to the fact that he was like, this dude is not really bad. He wants to save Rukia. I want to save Rukia too. You know, I'm gonna help him no matter no matter what. So like that fight will always be like number one to me, no matter what. A second fight that I love would be Ak. Just because I like the fight and I find this fight very funny, it would be Ichigo versus I think it's Ichigo, yeah, Ichigo versus Dordoni, one of the demoted Arrancars. And like this one, I don't know. I think this fight is just entertaining. I think it showed us how the Arrancar themselves are very different from each other, as in like no matter what, and they all have these like very interesting characters, and they might be funny, they might be stupid, they might just be very serious and like very cold blooded kind of deal. But I think having Dordoni being one of those that it's like, hey, I'm just gonna make fun of Ichigo the whole time. I'm gonna call him kid, and it's just I don't know. I think it was a good introduction to like Arrancars in a way. It didn't make it to where it's like, oh, Grimjow and Ulquiorra are the only ones that are like so badass, or just they're all cool, calm, and collected, or they just all want to fight and kill each other to death. And Dordoni was one of those. It was just fun. Another fight I would say that I like is, I would say the I don't know. I think I would go with the Kenpachi and Unohana. That fight was really good. I think it introduced us to to the real Unohana, and and the first time I read it, I was amazed at the fact that this woman is just vile. he's an evil person. You know, this bitch was not the image that I thought that she was, kind of deal. And it's like you do see some hints of it, her being like a very like menacing character whenever people try to go against her and she just looks at them and they're like, okay, I'm not gonna do it. So, you know, it's like you always think that she was a menacing character, but you never thought she was gonna be this menacing, you know? And yeah, I think that just the way that her character was, and it's like you're not really expecting her to be to this level of just fucking an insane, murderous, intent kind of character, you know. And I think it was good, and the way that they used her in the end was a good way to have Kenpachi as a character actually improve and expand on his own, like, I guess, emotions and his own uh, way of how he suppressed himself to match, you know, the person that he's fighting, and now he doesn't have to do that kind of deal. He doesn't have to suppress himself. He could just go all out, you know, go, you know, balls deep into a fight kind of deal. Um, and then honorable mention, if I'm being honest here, I want to say the Sajin versus Tozen fight. I think that was a very emotional fight, and it showcased a lot of emotion between the three characters that were involved in that fight, which was Sajin, Shohei, and Tozen. I was gonna put it as like my top three, but then Sajin said it first, so you know I'm not surprised that he said it first. But you know, I think that fight for sure was one of those like very like I liked Sajin a lot more in that fight than any other fight that he had because it was just like you see his emotions pouring out to the fact that Tozen ends up just, you know, treating him like shit kind of deal, and it's like, damn, you know, that was your homie. So you know, you see how it all devolved into the fact that Tozen was just so broken at that point that there was really no turning back for him, and it had to just, you know, finish him off kind of deal. So you know, a lot of the fights, you know, they just have some emotional implications that I like. Others I don't really like or don't really care for. Some fights are just badass, but everybody likes those fights kind of deal. So you know, I wanna pick something that's different and unique to I don't know what I like. You know, so not want to be of the people that pick the same three fights all over every time. So you know, just to be different a little bit.
But we're moving on to number 11, and this is the filler arc. So I have not seen much of the filler, but there are 5 arcs, and I'm wondering, do people have opinions on them? It is the Bount arc, the Captain Amagai arc, Zanpakuto Rebellion, and the Gote invading arc. And I want to go with Sanjin first. Have you seen any of the filler arcs so far?
So it's been a while since the Bount and Amagai arcs, so I don't remember a whole lot about them, and probably don't want to. It was a painful time because like I had like at the time of like Soul Society arc wrapping up, I had gotten a couple like manga books, and so I'd gotten the one that ends with like Aizen's betrayal, and then I'd gotten the one after that, and that starts like the Visored stuff and everything. And so it's like, oh, okay, this is happening soon, or like this is the next thing that they're going into. And then so it was like having that knowledge and then watching the anime go nope and go in a different direction when the Bount arc started, and it was just kind of a lot of what the hell is this? But so yeah, those two unfortunately just probably better off forgotten. But as I was kind of getting to in like the answer to my previous question, in some of the filler arcs, I do find a lot of potential, and there were some things that were really interesting about them. So I did watch the Zanpakuto Rebellion arc a couple times, and I thought it was a very fascinating arc, and probably the most like believable one for one that probably could have been an actual arc in the series, as it was already pre-established that the swords are living independent beings and like have their own forms that they take and things like that. And so it's fun to explore like what would happen if the swords didn't want to listen and just went off and did their own thing. And it helps it helps solidify and strengthen like the bond between the Soul Reaper and the Zanpakuto that they normally use. We get to learn a couple things about like maybe one or the other as they like try to reconcile and like get back together again. It was a little confusing because like I think the Soul Reapers could still like use their Shikai form even though the sword was entirely separate and off doing their own thing. So like they would use like the Shikai form like while fighting the sword that gives them the Shikai form, and I don't. But it's a filler arc, so it's not supposed to make sense. But there was some potential in there. And then, as I was talking about in my previous answer, the Gote invasion arc is surprisingly cool. I see it almost like the premise of like a Bleach fighting game, and I can totally relate to that because it's like, well, we want these two captains to fight each other, but normally they're on the same team. Oh well, what if there were a bunch of clones of them around, and then we could do this really cool fight that we have an idea for. And so it's just, I don't know, it's just like a fantasy like that, and just wanting to make these cool things happen. And you get like a lot of cool fights in there. I think some clashes that normally wouldn't happen, and the animation takes it up another level at times during the fights as well, which is why so a couple of the fights that I mentioned of like Sajin versus the Rigai Soifone and then Ichigo versus Kage Rosa just really stand out, particularly because the animation is just so good in those times. And so I can see like the vision and the potential in those two arcs, but I've pretty much left Bount and Amagai behind. I don't really care for those, so I'm kind of 50-50 on it overall.
Shug, how about you? How do you feel about the filler in Bleach?
Well, fuck the bounce. I think bounce is probably one of the worst things that ever happened. That is probably one of the worst things that I could ever set my eyes into. I hate them. I hate that whole thing. I don't even look at it. Like I don't even like looking at it. I prefer the Amagai arc over that, and that one's also bad. In all honesty, it's not really that much of a. It's not that great of a filler arc either. It was kind of those that was. Bout was just too fucking long, and it ran for 2 years, and it was like the worst thing ever. Because either way, it still didn't really fucking matter because it's a filler arc. Then the Amagai one, it was kind of weird. Kind of just, I don't know. I felt like that one was really unnecessary to even make, in all honesty. But like after they did all that shit, the Gote invasion arc was okay. I didn't hate it. The fights were really good. That's probably like the best thing about them, with the fights. Same with the Zanpakuto arc. The Zanpakuto arc is probably my favorite one. Mainly just because the different characters that the swords themselves are, which sometimes they match to how the characters they are. The characters that they are a part of. So it was always interesting and funny to see, especially with Ukitake's swords and Shunsui's swords. So it's like it was interesting to see how they all interacted with each other, and the fact that the only reason they just wanted to fight was because they don't talk to them. It was really like the main reason. And they're like, we feel like you don't really, trust us in any way, kind of deal. And it's like, it was like a fight between each other in terms of how they're like, I don't trust you. You don't like me. I don't like you, kind of deal. But we had to spend our lives with each other, kind of stuff. And I like how they did it. It was fun. It was entertaining. It's probably one of the best openings in the show. Definitely top 5. And yeah, like fuck, it was good. There were many fillers, but again, I blame Shonen Jump as always. That's the only excuse. I blame Shonen Jump. And so the fact that we get these fillers, it's like, I think Kubo said that the Zanpakuto arc is somewhat canon. There's some canon stuff about it, but like you never know for sure if he would actually make it canon. But again, you never really know. It's a filler arc, so you could just completely forget about it. But yeah, it's like one half of the fillers were good, the other half were just pure garbage. So it really just depends on how you see. So yeah, fuck the bounce.
I'm so glad I skipped this. I was like, I'm so glad I skipped it because it sounds terrible. Oh my god. But we're moving on to the final question, something more interesting. So main arcs, how would you rank them within the Bleach franchise? And Rocker, I want you to go first.
Oh, you didn't even give me my chance to talk about the fucking filler arcs, you butthole.
I thought you didn't want to. I thought you
No,
didn't want to for a
No,
second.
I was just gonna give the I'm gonna just give the quickest one, quickest ever, my quickest thoughts ever on this.
Fuck the bounce.
Fuck the mounts. Fuck basically. I liked the Gote invasion and the Zanpakuto rebellion. They have the most potential if Kuba were to actually go back in and retcon it and turn it basically into canon. But the other two can suck a dick. Fuck the bounce.
I'm so glad I skipped it. You have no idea.
Yeah. But onto the main arcs. Oh, I have been waiting for this one. Because this one here, I actually put some effort into ranking these. Can you believe that? Me, effort. But right now, coming in first place is I'm absolutely loving the 1,000-Year Blood. We're just getting so much information on everything. We got lore on the original Gote 13. We got lore on how the Zanpakuto were created through Oetsu Nemaya from Squad Zero, who created the Zanpakutos, the Asahuchis, all that shit. We got Ichibe basically saying he's named every Zanpakuto out there. Their Shikai, their Bankai, everything. We just got so much lore on the Zanpakuto. We're gonna be getting so much more lore on the Soul King. We're getting more lore on how Ichigo is basically a Heinz 57 of all the races, of all the available races: human, hollow, Quincy, Shinigami, all of that. We're just getting so much more lore. It's basically the lore heavy arc. Coming in second for me, I'd have to go with Fate Karakura Town. Invasion of the Soul Society arc, because we got some beautiful fucking fights from it. We also got more information on Aizen's reasons, his powers, from when the Hogyoku, what he did with the Hogyoku and all that. Just third place, I'm gonna have to give it to the Agent of the Shinigami arc, because it's what introduced me to Bleach and everything. Because it's just the initial arc and everything. You watch it, you like it, you get hooked on it. It's what got me hooked into Bleach is the Agent of the Shinigami arc. Third was the where is it? Soul Society arc. Wait, was it first, second? Yeah, Soul Society arc. Fourth. I am so sorry. Fourth is the Soul Society arc, because we got to see the inner workings of the Soul Society to a degree, the different squads, some of the day-to-day running of the different squads, how the captains are. Yeah, and then I would have to say Hueco Mondo, because we got to see a whole new realm and everything, so to speak, and everything where all the hollows are. It basically looks like the fucking dark side of the moon, basically. And then I'm gonna hurry up and wrap this up for me. Then would come in the Arankar invasion, then turn back the pendulum, and then ended up. I didn't really care for the Fullbring arc. I mean, it was good. It had some pretty entertaining fight scenes, but meh. That's the best I can give you on that one. I'm sorry if it was short, if you were expecting something longer, but that's all I really got to say on that one.
All right, so I guess I'll go next. No, first and foremost, I'll do this from best to worst. I'm not gonna take like way too long, but I will put number one with the fake Karakura Town arc, invasion of the Soul Society. This is a 10 in my opinion. This is like peak Bleach, as everyone has stated before. You have Aizen finally coming into like a full fruition of what he's doing with this whole war, fighting the captains losing. It really is a great final battle. If you couple all that in, you get the whole stuff with how it ended with well, not how it ended, how it began actually, with the whole Ukihara final battle and everything. You see Vasto Lorde, Ichigo for the first time in history. You see Aizen's plan in the final stages. You see fucking characters, you know, get clapped at the end. Aizen goes into this full transformation. Ichigo comes in, Dangai, he stops him for a bit. And then he turns into Mugetsu, which is an awesome move. When he does it, it is so cool. It's just, you get the coolest stuff, like all condensed in a nice little format that I don't think many arcs touch this one or comes close outside of some of the remaining top arcs. Next is Soul Society. It is once again peak. The only thing I didn't like about it was there are those like repetitive moments where, oh, Ichigo gets bodied a little bit, he heals, he gets bodied again, or he fights someone and he wins and he heals, and it's sort of like a repetitive thing that kind of happens in the middle. But the payoff, I think, is worth it because of the fact of, this is where you get introduced to more lore with the Soul Society. This is where you get introduced into more characterization with this little invasion and what the intentions are, and the fact that Bakuya is like so cold-blooded at this point that you think he's gonna like sacrifice his sister for the law, essentially. And it culminates into this cool ass battle. Ichigo gets his Bankai for the first time, and just like seeing that for the first time in history was admittedly like very well done. I thought it was very well done for what it was. The setup and the ending. The ending is Aizen betraying everyone and fucking just going off the handles, and nobody can stop him. He literally stops Ichigo's Bankai with one finger, and he explodes. That shit is insanity. So number two is definitely Soul Society for me. Number three, 1,000-Year Blood War. I give this arc praise for being ballsy by saying, hey, here's these prominent characters in the Soul Society with this new invasion. Let's fucking have this tyrant go in there and clean house. And that's literally how all of it begins, into a crazy blood war. And it gives more sort of motivation and origin to the protagonist with the villain. It connects them. Yuhabak is a powerhouse that just really can't be fucked with, and I think Bleach needed someone like real strong. But there is a caveat to this. It's not perfect, because I feel like this is where Kubo really started throwing and over explaining stuff. This is like throwing nails at a wall and hoping something sticks, and it really got a little bit accelerant and out of control at times, especially during the second half of the manga. That's the part I am specifically criticizing, because either you're gonna get stuff that feels relatively unexplained, or you're gonna get fights that end in like 5 seconds, and the first thing on your mind is what the fuck just happened. So that's why the score is not super high compared to other arcs, and that kills it a little bit, which I hope the anime kind of fixes some of these problems. But still, it is relatively entertaining. I did enjoy it. You see some fights with cool bankais you never seen before from captains, so that's also like really cool as well. Next is Arrancar. I thought Arrancar was a decent start for new threats. You got like a bunch of cool fights. The captains jumped in there last minute. You got to learn a great deal about the Arrancar though, which is the main point of this arc, and how Ichigo was struggling with his inner hollow. What am I going to do to fix this? If I transform again, I lose control. I don't know what's going to happen. But I think the payoff kind of works in the fake Kurakura Town arc versus this one. I felt like sometimes it did kick his feet a little bit in terms of pacing, but it was entertaining for the most part to see the Visors in action, and them sort of their personality and them trying to control the hollow with Ichigo and fighting them. I thought that was kind of a cool sequence. Next is Agent of the Shinigami, which is the first arc. I don't have too much to say about this other than it's the beginning of the series, and for what it's worth, and why I'm putting it here in the middle, I thought that they set up the story well. Like, some animes, they don't do this like super well as Bleach does. I thought they gave you a thorough analysis of what to expect with the hollows and the souls, the lost souls, the holds. That was pretty cool and interesting, but if you are a fight junkie, you're probably not gonna like this arc too much because it's very basic. But that's okay, because it's not bad. It's just, if you expect more in terms of what Ichigo is encountering, which is like low level hollows, you know, Gillians or whatever, you're probably not gonna like this one as much as I did. Next is Turn Back the Pendulum. Now, I haven't seen this one that much, but I can kind of see the complaints of people saying it comes to a crawl because they're doing all this exposition about the captains in the past and trying to explain Aizen. But I think it's needed, because if you want to know more about him and Uehara, you kind of need to look at this one, really understand it. If you want to know more about the Gotei, you know, 13 in its current form, then that's like, you know, really cool. I just kind of wish it was about the original team that they showed off in Thousand Year Blood War. I think that would have been a better story, but I understand they needed to explain Aizen and all that other stuff at the time. And the last two arcs, so Hueco Mondo. I feel like Hueco Mundo is where, at least in the anime, not the manga, but at least in the anime, this is where they started to put a lot of recaps and episodes, and I kind of got annoyed by that shit. I was like, okay, I understand. And then I saw this one episode that was an entire recap, and I'm like, wait, huh? I literally saw this like 5 minutes ago. The cool part was when the other characters were fighting either Arrancar or other enemies, hollows. You saw Chat fight that other guy, Uryu, or them teaming up and stuff like that. But I feel like it's almost like a worse Shinigami arc in a sense, where they try to set up this new hollow world and what they do, and the pacing is not as great as I wanted it to be, and that kind of sucks. It's like, if you like Orihime's nobility of getting smacked around a little bit and her healing Arrancar, that's fine, but personally I just thought it was a little bit too drawn out for his own good. And the arc that I didn't like from what I'm hearing about it is Fullbring. I hate the fact that Ichigo lost his powers, and I also like, Fullbrings are an interesting concept in terms of like humans having these like underlying powers, and we knew that Ichigo was going to get a new Fullbring at the end. I'm pretty sure it was common knowledge, but due to the fact that it's so painfully obvious that this was going to happen, it kind of kills the sting. And I don't know if it's just me, but I don't like animes where it's like, oh, well, the villain is a mirror image of me or my occupation. The villain is someone that does the same thing that I did, but he's like someone that had a falling out with the Soul Society. So I'm just like, okay, it's just the most bland premise for a villain I think I could ever think of. Is like, there are some that does it fine, but for this, I just saw it coming a mile away. So it's way too predictable for my taste, and I just have to rate it as bottom for me. But that is all of my choices. Shug, how about you? What is your favorite arcs?
Well, I had to write them down just so I didn't have to look at the list. But yeah, I won't really go too much into depth with it. I mainly rate these in terms of how I like the fights. I'm into the fights, and I rank them based on fights. I That's all I really care for, and normally, plot reasons I do like reach into them and whatnot, but I try not to delve too deep into it or think about it too much. But yeah, like Thousand Year Blood War, I think is a very good quote unquote uh, final arc, or very quote unquote final arc before the Hell arc, or unless they don't really follow it up with anything. But yeah, I think the fights on there were very. I think there were a lot of very important fights there, and a lot of them had a lot of meaning. Some deaths were just not on purpose or had any actual purpose to them, or they should have just not tried to kill any of them. But overall, I think it's just a full blown good arc. A lot of new powers are showcased. A lot of new things are shown off, and you get to see a lot more of Quincy's and not just Uryu the whole fucking time. So it had some sort of uniqueness to it, especially with the Quincy's being introduced or reintroduced in a way as a larger force than just one man or two dudes, because Uryu's dad also. But it's good. It's fun. It's it brought me back to Bleach. It's like I love it. Second would be Soul Society. I think Soul Society again. I got introduced to Bleach in the Soul Society. That's my shit. And again, I will always reference Renji versus Ichigo in that our whole arc. It's again my favorite fight. So I think the fights on that one showcased a lot of what the characters or the main characters themselves prepared themselves for. Some not really ending up in a good way, like Chad and Orihime and Uryu losing his powers. But they had what they trained for, which was to make sure they don't fucking die. So they did a good job. They did a very good job. So yeah, number 3, I will say the Hueco Mundo. Hueco Mundo again, based on the fights. The fights were pretty much fun, especially with them introducing those demoted espadas. So it was interesting to see those unique characters. It was also cool to see that there was a whole forest of Menos Grande, just there kind of thing. So it introduced us to some wacky characters like Nell and Tondo Chaka, and what was his name? I forget the other one's name. I'll probably remember it later. But yeah, you have those guys get introduced, and they add this little comedy routine to them. So the I don't know. It felt fun. It felt like a little adventurous arc, even though they were fighting with Pesce. So Dondo Chaka and Pesce and Nell. That little group there was just. I think they were really good side characters for the whole quote unquote invasion arc. I mean, these are all practically invasion arcs if you really look at it. But yeah, they were fun. The fights were interesting. You of course had the what's it called? The introduction of the Bastolorde and all the powers that appeared there. Any type of upgrades that Ichigo got just fighting in Hueco Mundo itself, and just the overall unique characters, the espadas. After that, I do have the Fate Karakura, which again kind of expands from the Hueco Mundo and Arrancar Invasion arc, which is just full blown out war. It's good, it's fun, it's interesting. Again, it showcased even more of the powers of the captains and other characters that are introduced in other arcs and whatnot. So it's very interesting to see. All the fights were very cool. They're very they had a lot of emotions. Some fights were very very deep into the characters' emotions, and you get involved with them. Again, with the Tozen and Sajin fight, or having Stark versus Shunsu being not a very deep fight, but something of a fight that was like it could have just they could have either gone all out against each other or just not done anything. So it's like it really just there was a lot of highs and lows in terms of how cool these fights are, how intense they were, and they just the pure chaos of the whole entire arc. It's just being full blown war in different spots of the town. Then for number 5 will be Agent of Shinigami. The Agent of Shinigami being the first arc, you get introduced to everything. You know, that's like the first thing you see. The first character you get introduced to is Rukia. You know, so it's like it just introduces you to this adventure that you're gonna experience. Sure, it's not an arc for everybody because it's a very slow burning arc. It's a lot of introductions, a lot of again, a lot of introductions to a lot of mechanics that are gonna be more will make more sense later on into that arc and into the rest of the show. So you know, it was a good introduction. There was a lot of it, but it was a good introduction to the show itself, or the manga, or you know, pretty much the whole series of itself. After that, I do have Turn Back the Pendulum. If I remember correctly, this is the one where it was Shinji when he was a captain, right? Whenever he would turn to a wizard.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So that one was a short one. I don't remember it being too long, but it was like a whole thing of like, oh shit, this dude was a captain kind of deal. You know, it's like you see these characters, it's like I didn't start reading the manga itself until like the Fullbring arc. So, you know, at the time when I was first watching it and I saw these and I was like, oh, that's cool. You know, Shinji was a captain, fucking Lisa was the lieutenant of Shunsui, and you had Rose, Kensei, and fucking Love. You know, they were all captains too. You know, so it was like it was seeing all these characters that you just met a couple arcs ago, seeing their actual past, what happened to them, and why they turned into wizards out of basically nowhere to you, basically. And it was interesting. You get to see these characters and see how Aizen is himself as a villain evolved from. So, you know, and it was cool. I think it was a very interesting arc, even though it was pretty short. I wouldn't really even call it an arc because it wasn't really too long, but you know, it was still like a thing of in the middle of somewhere in a fight kind of introduction or transferring from one arc to another kind of deal. It was just there. And it was good. It gave you some background to what the hell happened to them, why Aizen is how he is, and how he climbed the ranks out of nowhere. And yeah, so after that, I do have the Arankar invasion. The Arankar invasion was okay. Again, a lot of fights, a lot of like characters getting their powers introduced, like with the Ikaku's Bankai and whatnot, and but there weren't just it wasn't. I think it was lackluster. I think the introduction to these Arankar was very just plain. It's just random fights, and they're like, "Hey, I'm this bad guy. I'm taking Warhammer with me. Bye." You know, so it's like, okay, Grimjow is probably like the best part of the entire arc. In all honesty, not even Ulquiorra. So, it was cool to see him. He was fun. He was entertaining because he felt, again, like an Ichigo, like Ren mentioned a while back. So it was cool to see him, and it was cool to see him fight and get angry because he lost. But I think that's pretty much it. In all honesty, I don't really recall too much of that arc besides just Ikaku's Bankai and just Ichigo beating Grimjow. And then we have the Fullbring arc. I don't hate the Fullbring arc. I think it should have not been just Ichigo's focused arc. I think it should have focused a little bit more on Chad. Agreed. Because it's like they try to introduce a whole new power, and they're like, "Oh, this person's a Fullbringer. This person's a Fullbringer. This person's a Fullbringer." And it's like, okay, so Orihime is one, Chad is one. Why? And like, sure, they have this all because of Ichigo and his Reiatsu and all that kind of shit that kind of helped them develop these powers and whatnot. But it was, I don't know, I felt like these powers were just added randomly out of nowhere for just to make an arc, and just to make an excuse to give Ichigo his powers back. So I feel like they could have just done what they did and just stab him in the chest and give him his power back at any point. But I guess the way they did it made sense. I don't know. I don't really know what to tell you. But the fights themselves are not that bad, especially Ginjo and Ichigo were pretty good fight. I like that fight. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of the side characters got blown off just for Ichigo to get another arc of training for himself. And I feel like they could have at least tried to make some of the side characters like Chad have some more time to shine in this little arc. And I would have liked that. I think Chad is a very underrated character in this whole show. So, you know, it was kind of disappointed not to see much of him or even have, I don't even think he had his own fight in this whole thing. He was just there. So, you know, just him being there and existing was just like, okay, you treat this man like shit. So that's the only thing I don't like that Kubo did. But besides that, I don't really hate the arc. It's just, you know, it was too Ichigo focused, and I wanted other side characters to have some time in the spotlight, also to showcase their own abilities and whatnot.
Bonjin, it is your turn. How would you rank these Bleach arcs in your opinion?
All right, so I'm gonna go in ascending order, so worst to best. In last place, I am putting the Lost Agent, the Fullbring arc. It's basically pointless. They introduce so many characters that are forgettable, and I think they're all dead. As soon as the Soul Reaper showed up to fight the Fullbringers, like all the Fullbringers got bodied, and just like it tried to introduce like a whole power system that just doesn't matter in a series that already has too many power systems. And just yeah, I'm just like I kind of wish the series had maybe ended before this arc, or the arc could have just been get your Soul Reaper powers back like more directly, instead of just beating around the bush and then all of a sudden at the end we can give you your Soul Reaper powers back. That's kind of where I'm at with that. So I'm just not fond of the Fullbring arc. In 7th place, I'm doing Agent of the Shinigami. I mean, you got to start somewhere, but I did mention earlier that the street level stuff just wasn't all that appealing for me. Anything before Byakuya and Renji come up is just kind of to me. And so it's just kind of it doesn't really do much for me in this particular arc at the level that it's at. After that, in 6th place, I'm putting the Arankar invasion. It was fine having the training arc of having Ichigo meet the Vizards and everything like that, getting a training arc with them, and then the Arankar showing up as the big new bad, and it's just kind of yes, we're building things up, but this is leading to something else, and so pretty much everything after this is like things that lead up to, or things that lead to, so it's like a means to an end. 5th place, I'm putting Turn Back the Pendulum. It was interesting just going into the past for a bit and just getting a different perspective on some things, getting more of the backstory of the Vizards, getting some more backstory of Urahara, I believe, and when he left the Soul Society. And so just kind of here's why they're where they are now type of thing. And I thought that was good. I thought that was a much needed perspective change. 4th, I'm currently giving the 1,000-Year Blood War. It of course has some brutal fights, and I'm loving all the plot revelations in it. Like Ichigo is part Quincy. Unohana was a Kenpachi, one of the original Gotei 13 members. Stuff like hollows are poisonous to Quincy's, and that's why the Quincy's want to eradicate hollows. Things like that. Like all of those plot revelations are great, but it's all just backed by some just astoundingly stupid decisions, I feel like. Whether it's like how they're written or just like in character, how stupid the decision is. We're talking about like Squad Zero, getting introduced to Squad Zero, and then like most of them who have like incredibly crucial roles to the function of the Soul Society just willingly choose to kill themselves so one of them can use their Bankai. And by the sounds of things, the Bankai isn't even going to work very well at restraining anybody. And just like we all talked about like Head Captain Yamamoto, but just like getting the intel beforehand about, hey, the enemy can steal our Bankai, maybe we shouldn't use it. Comes to the battlefield, uses his Bankai, the real Quincy King, please stands up. and then immediately proceeds to use his Bankai again, and then gets it stolen and dies because of that. Just like, and then I mentioned like the things about like the power creep and everything that are bothering me, and just like being so different from how I expected it. Like it's high on so many people's lists, but for me, there are just like too many things that aggravate me about it to just like revisit or like it too much. But third, I'm putting Hueco Mondo. Was very emotionally driven for the protagonist, just like very straightforward. Orihime's captured. Everybody comes together, rescue Orihime. I mean, it doesn't need to be more complicated than that. And then at the same time, we get to know a lot more about basically what we've been fighting this whole time. Get to know more about the structure of Hueco Mundo. We get to know about the Vasto Lorde, the Espada, and all that, which becomes very important in the arc to follow. And of course, like, really fantastic fights in here with Ichigo doing his final battles versus Grimmjow and Ulquiorra. They're goated. They're very well worth it, and there's even some decent side fights with Mayori and Kenpachi Zaraki, each fighting an Espada or a Vasto Lorde, and getting their time to shine there as well. What weighs this down a little bit for me, at least what allows at least a couple arcs to come above it, is just like the goofy and wacky side shit that happens. Like they mentioned Pesce and Donda Chaka, and just like, do we really need that? Like, I'm also a resident Cone hater as well. I'm not a fan of Cone, and so just like these side goofy characters that don't matter to the story at all. And just like, I mean, Nell had something going on for her where she could like transform into an actual Vasto Lorde, or at least like a Rankar in some form, when her mask became whole and things like that. But just I don't know. The wacky shit just weighs it down just a tiny bit, but overall it's a pretty good arc. And then second, I have to put Soul Society. Everything interesting about Bleach to me came from this arc. If this arc did not exist, or if it came in a later time, I maybe wouldn't even be a Bleach fan. But just we get to know so much about Soul Reapers, where they're from, how they work. We get so many great. We get the action side with so many physical fights. And then we also get this murder conspiracy going on in the background of all that, and so just it's just really exceptional both ways, and it's a really fantastic arc and just the peak of anime. And then what's the only thing that could surpass that arc? The arc that resolves everything set up in that arc. That's right. Number one goes to Fake Karakura Town. Just like everything built up to that point over the course of several arcs. We get the final battle. Everyone is here except the ones that were still in Hueco Mundo for the most part. But we get like the Soul Reapers versus the Espada and Arankars, and Aizen, Gin, and Tosin are there. The Vizards join the fray. We get really interesting fights, really important, like really emotional fights, really hype fights. Everything's going on. We get all these like callbacks come back, and just like really crucial resolution to basically everything that had been going on up until that point. And to be honest, I mean, like, if it weren't for some of the important lore revelations that are coming up in Thousand Year Blood War, I kind of wish the series just ended after Fake Karakura Town. Just like Ichigo lost his powers. All right, fine. That's it. I'm good. It was just such a high note, and I don't think we're ever quite going to get back up there. So that's why I put it at number one.
All right, so it is time to do our outros. Very extensive and detailed podcast on Bleach. I'm going to do my outro first, so you can find me on Twitter at RenOperative_. I think you can find me on Blue Sky now, because I'm over there too at Renegade Operative Blue Sky. I'll put it in the description, so no worries about that. You can find me on Twitch at Renegade_Operative, and you can find me on YouTube at Renegade Operative. I'm gonna try to get this podcast up as soon as possible. No promises, because obviously it's going to take me a while, but once I do, you guys can watch it, and then I'm going to immediately run over and binge watch Naruto Shippuden, because that's the next podcast, and oh boy, I got a lot more episodes to deal with, so here we go. All right, so Rocker, what is your outro for today?
All right. Well, first off, to Saijin, I believe you had referenced Nell. She's a former Espada, the number 3 Espada, actually.
Yeah, I remember them showing that on her back.
Yep. But you can find me online on all the sites: Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Blue Sky, at Rocker66600666. Thank you for having me on here, and remember, to help control the pet population, please spay and neuter your degenerates.
That would have been Drill if he was here, but you know what? I digress.
That's what I was. That's who I was referring to.
I had to throw it out there. I'm sorry, goddamn. But Sajin, where can we find you?
First, I want to say just big thanks to Renegade Operative and everybody at the Infinite Ammo Syndicate for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I always love talking about some Bleach.
Oh, no problem.
You guys can find me at Sajin GT on YouTube and Twitter. I'm not calling it the other thing. Also Sajin's Gamer Tag on Twitch. I'm going to be doing some fun Halloween stuff coming up pretty soon here. So if you want to join me for that, by all means. But yeah, thanks again for having me.
And Should, where can we find you, buddy?
Well, you guys can pretty much find me anywhere, but my presence is mainly on YouTube. So follow me or subscribe to me, basically, to Sugar Bastion on YouTube. And I got a lot of things going on in there. So if you guys enjoy just stupid shit with friends, feel free to come in and watch. That's about it. Thank you guys.
All right, and we are going to end this podcast. We're supposed to have a guest come in, so I guess we'll give them like a couple minutes, but that is all the main questions at least wrapped up for Bleach. So everyone out there, YouTube land, at least for this section of the podcast, we hope you guys enjoyed it. Take care of yourselves, and as always, have a good day. We will see you later.
Bye bye.